Greetings, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking, and today is Worldwide Wednesdays. We have made it this far again, and I don't know what keeps happening to my bunker, the Oval Office. Hold on a second. It's pretty jarring when there's this giant green spot. The aliens are trying to capture me and use their weird technology to get me. So that's exactly what that was. Good afternoon, evening. Oh my goodness. Why do I suck at this so badly? There. Now we are in the Oval Office. Okay. Would everybody please disregard the first minute of this stream? Good evening, my fellow Americans. We have a lot on our plate. Let's wind back from the whole stream and cheekiness and what we're about to discuss today. And let's be very honest. We have a lot on our plate. And we don't have leaders. We don't have organizers. We don't have people who inspire or give us much in the way of hope. We have AOC, Mamdani, and Bernie Sanders all rallying together in New York. And at best, it's giving Democrats the false belief that there is popular support for their party when it's actually just those three. And those three continue to be Miliquest at best. So, why am I starting off the stream from such an extremely low emotional point? Because what we really need is we need to get out the message that we can do better, that we deserve better, that we want better, that the world is a cruel and dark place, and that it becomes more and more cruel with every single passing minute of every single hour of every single day. Because of this administration, because of the fecklessness of the Democrats, because it's a cruel world, get used to it, right? Buckle up, Buttercup. I think it is difficult to just give an inspiring message. We will overcome and persevere together. Join me, my brothers and sisters, and we will reignite the flames of passion in our nation. That kind of messaging, there's a time and a place for it, right? That time and place is in the future after we've won. Right now, the message that we need to get out there is there are many of us who are hungry, many of us who are cold, many of us who are struggling to find food, clothing, and shelter, to pay our bills, to find work, to just even get income, to gain access to healthcare or education. And we need to say loudly, repeatedly, we need these things. We demand these things. These are the basic things we demand, that we deserve, that we need as a country, as a people. And I think if we go through that list, food, shelter, wages, food, shelter, wages, healthcare. Food, shelter, wages, healthcare. Right? And whatever way makes it easier to repeat. Normally, let's see, food, shelter, wages, healthcare, right? So usually that would be what? Food, healthcare, shelter, wages. See, that actually doesn't kind of flow that well. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me, people? Were you able to hear me at all this entire time? Because that would be rather embarrassing if you didn't. Okay, so wait, you couldn't hear me this whole time? Oh, you could hear me. Okay, so then I just recently. That's fine. I can live with that. So, I think every protest, every engagement, every single call that we make to, I don't give a shit if it is the school board, I don't give a damn if it's the mayor, city council, state level, if it's the judges, the Congress, Senate, presidency, I don't care, the governor's office, I don't care who we call, when you call them. Food, wages, shelter, healthcare. FWSH. And I will put that in there. Food, wages, shelter. FWSH. Fwish. 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 Right? Those are the things that I think we need to talk about. Food, shelter, or food, wages, shelter, healthcare. If we're not talking about these things, these are the things that bind us, whether you're Democrat, whether you're Republican, whether you're MAGA, whether you're leftist, whether you're Ronanist, it doesn't matter. The things all human beings care about, well, technically not wages. People don't give a shit about wages because that's the only way to get food, shelter, and healthcare. But the point that I'm making here, food, shelter, wages, healthcare. Food, wages, shelter, healthcare. No, I think wages definitely needs to be the second one. Those are the things that unite us. We all want to eat. We all want to have gainful employment that gives us prosperity. We all need shelter, literally, in order to live. And we all need healthcare in order to survive and thrive, right? And I think if we make that our mantra, right? And we can say all the other things, right? Defund the police, no fascist USA. You know, we can do all these things. But when it comes to our unifying message, food, wages, shelter, healthcare, I think that has to be our unifying message. And I get it. I am some guy who at best gets 10 views on Twitch and maybe, where am I at right now in total views? 4,000 views on my channel. Like, I get that I am a small fish myself, right? See what I did there? But that doesn't change the fact that what we need is revolutionary speak that binds us. If Antifa, if anti-fascism, if literally being anti-fascist is being used as a weapon against us, then we need to stick to something else. Food, wages, shelter, healthcare. Those should always be our demands. Those should be the common cries. No matter where we are, food, wages, shelter, healthcare. And if we want to be really quick on our little speech, fwish, 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 fwish. Of course, I don't know how loudly you can say, fwish! I don't know. But what I do know is food, wages, shelter, and healthcare is a unifying message. If liberalism isn't, if leftism isn't, if socialism isn't, if Marxism and communism isn't, MAGA sure as shit is not any longer. If anti-fascism isn't anymore, right? If patriotism keeps getting co-opted, then we have to come up with our own, right? So, food, wages, shelter, healthcare. I think we're going to start, I might even add that into the stream here, somewhere, maybe at the bottom. There seems to be like there could be space here at the bottom. So, without further ado, we will get into the stream and all the things that we're going to be talking about today. I guess we're going to have to, unfortunately, start off with tariffs because, God forbid, but also the rising Axis powers between America and Japan. Instead of Japan, Russia, and Germany, it's now Japan, America, Israel, and Argentina. We're probably not going to watch all 10.
U.S. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, is celebrating a successful trip to Japan. Just a short time ago, he visited American troops aboard the USS George Washington. It is one of the final stops in the country before he leaves on Wednesday. President Trump also meeting with Jasmine.
Something, remember, that we need to mention is that Trump and everybody who goes to his rallies mandates that only people who support him get to go to those rallies, because there will be no dissent present at those rallies. Meaning, the United States military is being forced to comply with propaganda video footage so that the president of the United States doesn't feel like the jackass that he is and doesn't undermine the strength and unity of the American people. So what you're seeing here, everybody with their videos, regardless of black, white, or whatever else, every single one of these sailors are MAGA sympathizers who are witnessing everything that we are doing as a nation. The extrajudicial killings in Latin America, the shutting down of the government, the denying of people food and health care. They are all sympathizing, and they are all in the military. So remember this as well. When you ask yourself, do you think the military would turn against you, a person, a citizen of these United States? Look at this picture and look at the smiles that are happening. And then ask yourself that question again.
Japanese Prime Minister Tsunei Takaichi in Tokyo earlier. The two leaders signed an agreement on critical minerals and rare earths and showered each other with praise. We are covering all the angles of the president's trip to Japan. Hanako Montgomery is...
So, because America can no longer get its rare earth metals from China because China is refusing to trade with us, we're getting them from Japan now, who has no qualms about being allies with a fascist dictator because they themselves just elected a fascist dictator. They just don't realize it yet.
Standing by for us in Tokyo, but first, let's bring in senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes. And Kristen, it just seems like the partnership between these two countries has only grown more with this trip.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what we expected, particularly given who this prime minister is. She is a mentee of Shinzo Abe, who President Trump was incredibly close to his first term. In fact, he's called Shinzo Abe one of the best friends that he had. And when you look back at the fact that President Trump was...
Wow. Using friendship with Donald Trump as like a bragging point. If you're friends with Donald Trump in the same... the same company as Epstein and Prince Charles or Andrew, whichever fucking one it was. Like, that's not a good fucking look. With Milei from Argentina and all these other dictators and fascists, like, these are not good people. And associating yourselves with them, who are then by themselves associating with Trump and using that as a bragging right, is disturbing.
Close to almost no world leaders his first term. It really shows you just how deep that relationship was. And what we saw today was nothing short of that. He praised not only Abe, but the new prime minister, and said they believed it was going to be a...
All right. I gotta also say something. I know I've been really tired and exhausted lately during these streams, and I apologize. My work schedule is just not allowing me to get the rest that I'm used to getting. So apparently that's, I think, manifested into an extremely bad migraine and a bit of nausea. So if I am a little out of it today and or tomorrow, which also tomorrow, because my moderator Anna is going to be trick-or-treating with her daughter, we'll also be probably starting late tomorrow, probably closer to 8. Either which way, I apologize in advance because I am struggling right now, but I didn't want to just not show up and give, you know, a solid showing, because at the end of the day, if I want to be president or even in Congress in these times of fascism, a little headache isn't going to be able to be an excuse, right?
Great relationship. He also praised the alliance between the U.S. and Japan, and it was a clear flex of muscle as President Trump goes into this meeting at the end of his trip with Chinese President Xi. One of the interesting things we heard from...
I mean, I'm really not listening to what she has to say, because arguably they're just talking about the diplomatic relations that are growing between these two extremely conservative individuals. But I want to look at some of the optics here. Trump is looming behind this prime minister. He is literally looming right behind her and looking over her shoulder as an intimidation factor. And like maybe people would say, no, he's just standing there so he can be in the camera or whatever else. But usually when you let another world leader speak, you give them the stage. You give them the stage, right? And the fact that he is right behind her, like literally right behind her, looming over her, is not normal behavior. It's not normal etiquette. It's not normal anything. So even though they're finding their alliance and all of this teamwork and whatever else, at the end of the day, Trump is still a misogynistic jackwad that cannot help himself. Especially the more his mind starts to deteriorate, he goes back to his more primal urges and activities, which is just being a bully. Just a misogynistic douche nozzle. So, let's actually listen to a little bit more.
From President Trump, particularly when it comes to defense, was an announcement of U.S. missiles coming to Japan. Take a listen.
I'm delighted to report that I've just approved the first batch of missiles. You saw a couple of them coming down with me. I hugged them. We need them. They're the best in the world. Nobody has them like we have them. Why
are we still getting into the arms? See, this is the thing. We're building these relationships with other countries by becoming weapons manufacturers, by literally being arms dealers. America is essentially the largest arms dealing entity in the world, and that's how we're solidifying our neighbors and our friendships. Furthermore, why does Japan need a shit ton of missiles? Is Japan building up the world's strongest army like never seen before, like Germany's doing? Like, all we're doing is again, the accelerationism that led to, the arms race that directly led to World War I and directly to World War II. We're accelerating it across Europe. We're accelerating it into Japan now. China has been accelerating lately. North Korea never stopped. And it seems like there's a couple of Latin American countries that are at least building up their military presence, if for no other reason than to rebut the United States of America. These are all extremely disturbing and extremely distressing turns of events that are the preludes of war. Countries don't build up arms for defense. The only reason why there wasn't more violence during the Cold War is because of mutually assured destruction. But make no mistake, there were absolutely conflicts between Russia and America, in Latin America, in in Africa, in the Middle East, and in Central Asia. There were skirmishes all over the planet between Russian influence and American influence, because the arms race and dealing never stopped and never slowed down until the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then it just shifted to the global war on terror. Well, Desert Storm and Shield, and then eventually the global war on terror. And now it's going against the cartels, except now it's also going, now we're beginning to see form in real time the Axis powers and, well, the new allies. BRICS versus NATO versus, I guess maybe Japan involved there somewhere. Like, these are not good times. Like, our safety, the peace that we have known on Earth for roughly 30 years is crumbling quickly. Not just because of this ass clown, but because of all of the right-wing extremism that has been building in every single country across the globe for the past 50 or 60 years. Fascism, totalitarianism, authoritarianism, under the veneer of neoliberalism and globalization, has been building. Right-wing movements have been building. Patriotism and nationalism have been building steadily, year over year for decades. And that can only end one way: conflict. There can only ever be one ultra-nationalist group at the top. And in World War II, that would have been probably the Nazis or the Japanese at that time. If the Allies had lost, it would have been between the Nazis and the Japanese. But because they lost and then got integrated into our society, it just took an 80-year hiatus for that white supremacy and nationalism to rise to the top again. So now America as a superpower and Russia and China as also superpowers, but with dwindling economic importance or growing economic importance, that balance of power is now steadily shifting, and these various countries are filling the voids. We will likely see a World War III in our lifetimes if this behavior is not curbed rapidly. Now you might be thinking, well, Sam, that's a far cry from the food, wages, shelter, and healthcare that you were talking about earlier. Correct. Because what has right-wing fascism always been promising us? Better prices on food, better wages, better access to homes, and better healthcare. They've been promising these four things to us and never once delivering. So if we hold them accountable, if we're out in the streets, if we're calling them, harassing them, emailing them, day in and day out, demanding the things that they promised, either A, they're going to have to deliver, or B, we can call them back. Once our organization hits a critical mass, once our unification hits a critical mass, that will, by definition, create a structure for us to maneuver with. Then we can be like, hey, while you're here, sign this petition. Hey, while you're here, call for this emergency vote. Hey, while you're here, demand X, Y, and Z. We have to gather first. We have to gather first. And then we can put an end to this stupidity.
It's the problem. Everybody wants it. But it's the first batch of fives. Madam President.
Now, a couple of other things to note. They also agreed to a free and open and clear Indo-Pacific. This idea that this was not sovereign territory, that is in direct, really in the face of China, who in recent years has tried to claim sovereign territory over the Indo-Pacific. In addition, they signed a rare minerals deal, which is very important to President.
I'm not quite sure where the what I'm assuming. So so what they're saying is literally this whole area, and I guess there's probably like islands like in the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea, there's the Yellow Sea somewhere off here. Is there a map that'll do a better example of that? So like our Marshall Islands, Gibraltar, Samoa, Fiji, Taiwan specifically, I guess. Okay. So this basic area is what they're talking about in this conversation. And there's little islands that are in the ocean that aren't necessarily named or anything. And then I thought the Yellow Sea was around here. Maybe I'm just dumb and I'm not seeing it. But those are the things that China is trying to claim sovereignty over. And the United States and Japan, right, are claiming that those are actual international waters that either A, have their own sovereignty or don't belong to anybody, right? Which is in direct conflict with Chinese efforts to expand their area of influence.
Trump, as he's trying to get the U.S. to be less dependent on China for these rare earths. All of this to say...
I was going to say, I don't know what the next words out of her mouth is going to be, but becoming less dependent on China for rare earth metals, but still being dependent on another country with this fickle behavior and emotional strength that this child in office has, we are doomed unless we can develop technologies that do not rely on rare earth metals, which is one of the reasons why investing in technologies that use hydrogen, that use thorium, that use other resources altogether must be our priority. I mean, let's think about this logically for a second. Okay, so we're at odds with China right now. For however you want to slice it, we're at odds with China, right? So we're looking to Japan to offset the losses that we're getting, but we're still getting our manufacturing from China anyway. It's just now costing twice as much to do, but we're still doing it from China. So now we're trying to find other groups to trade with. The only other ones who make things at that cheap rate at that level is India. That's it. Those are the two countries, China and India. Yeah, you'll see occasionally Vietnam, Malaysia, and this, that, and the other, but the big epicenters of manufacturing are India and China with their cheap labor and over 1 billion population, right? But those countries also have materials and resources that we need. And so does Japan. Rare earth metals seem to find themselves in extremely rocky mountainous areas and extremely volcanic areas. Great. Who would have thunk, right? You would think that would mean the Rocky Mountains as well, but the Rocky Mountains are older than the newer land masses of Japan, if you will, right? But that's getting a bit too Professor Ronan, right? But at the same time, China's also developing their own processors, CPUs, GPUs, computing software, and all this, that, and the other, which has been dominated by Japan and America, respectively, Intel and NVIDIA. And if we lose dominance, as in American industry loses dominance in those fields, then China literally has no reason to do business with America either, other than some things might be cheaper or easier to do. At the same time, China has almost quadrupled the population of the United States of America, is developing the land, as in building high-speed rail, better cities, better access to healthcare, improving their education, improving their clean energy access to utilities and resources. China is developing domestically at an exponential rate that we cannot match. We cannot match it due to the sheer numbers involved. China is about landmass-wise the same size as America, but has quadruple the population, which means quadruple the workforce, also quadruple the elderly, and yet a fraction of our prison population. So they also are steadily and rapidly improving their education systems compared to ours, and they have an improved mass transit system, which, if nothing else, allows people and goods to travel more efficiently, more rapidly, and at a higher rate. An airplane can carry, 300 people at once from a runway where you have to go to and wait and do and board and then maybe and you're flying, and then it's the same process all over again. A 6-hour flight is typically a 6-hour drive. A 2-hour flight or a 1-hour flight is usually the equivalent of a 6-hour drive. Now, most people don't want to drive 6 hours, to be fair, but that's the difference. A 2-hour flight is the equivalent of a 6-hour drive, whereas a 2-hour bullet train could be the equivalent as a 2-hour flight and move thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people in one go, depending on how long the train is. And we're also talking about goods, right? A tractor trailer can move 44 tons of goods or more, give or take 22 to 24 tons of goods per load, or per trailer at least. A train can literally move hundreds of carts, run hundreds of railroad cars, stretching for literal miles on one track nonstop. Hundreds of carts. I don't know what the upper limit is in the United States, but it's hundreds. It's definitely miles worth of rail, because one, I've seen it with my own eyes, and two, that's what rail is there for, right? Now, imagine you can move that type of rail at 200 miles per hour, 300, 400, 500 miles per hour. Granted, the safety that's involved there, right? The machinations that are involved, moving that much mass at that much speed, you run into a whole different can of worms. But that's where maglev, as in magnetic levitation, quote unquote, transportation comes into play, where it essentially has extremely high-powered, rare earth, magnets, or even electromagnets, that basically hover and use no friction other than air friction to move. Air friction is the only friction they encounter, but with the movement, it's literally just the power involved of getting goods from one way or the other, which means you can simultaneously bring the inertia of 5 miles worth of goods going 500 miles per hour at a dead stop. Not at a dead stop because of inertia, but you can slow that down much safer with a lot less loss of wear and tear on the rails and on the trains themselves. You can move goods at a much larger and much more rapid pace. And there's increasing and improving technology too. For instance, if we had vacuum tubes, which I'm probably remember Professor Ronan, don't lose me here. If we had a vacuum tube rail system, okay, we're talking no air friction, same maglev technology, and the ability to counteract inertia, we could move the same stuff 3,000 miles in a matter of hours. Now, sure, the amount of construction and technology involved is significant, but we already have some of these systems for emergencies already. We already are implementing some of these systems in extremely volatile areas that would be unsafe otherwise, right? So we have technology that can be damn near considered science fiction in the United States of America right now. But the investment is in law enforcement, corrections, and arms dealing. Meanwhile, China is thoroughly investing in infrastructure, healthcare, technology, education, food quality, production, manufacturing, and transportation, while also finding time to develop weapon systems and other technology. We're only focusing on control. They're focusing on broad-scale development. And it's only possible. China is only capable of doing what it is doing now because for the past 30 years, they invested in building that infrastructure, building that foundation, building those stones, creating that pathway that is leading to the process of today where they can invest in multiple areas and spread their vast country out as far as they can while still knitting it much closer together. That bridge that took them 4 years to build took a 2-hour trip and slashed it down to 5 minutes and made it a tourist attraction. The amount of goods movement that can now happen across that pass compared to before, especially if they make a rail path across that same valley, which may or may not happen, would also dramatically increase the sheer amount of people that can cross. That once again makes the country that much more interconnected. Which means even if people are just commuting to work and they had to go around 2 hours, now it's only 5 minutes, which means there is less time and delay to get to work, less traffic, less opportunity for this, that, and the other, but therefore more opportunity for economic growth between the two areas that are on the other sides of the bridge. Meaning economic growth, social growth, right? Educational growth, scientific development. Who knows? The sky's the limit. The more connections you create within your own country, the stronger your country becomes. Food, wages, shelter, healthcare. Those are the foundations. Those are the building blocks. Those are the cornerstones of any nation, great or small. And China invested in those full tilt. Is China perfect? Absolutely not. They are in an expansionist regime. They are using trade as diplomatic war or as economic war. They are undermining European hegemony and Western supremacy, right? They're creating BRICS. They're creating their own trade deals. They're doing this, that, and the other. They are creating tensions in different spheres. They sure are. They're trying to claim sovereignty over 7 different territories in areas of the ocean. They're absolutely doing those things. But they are also developing their country at the same time, which means these activities are becoming more sympathetic. Just like American hegemony was sympathized with because, they're invading this country or that country or bringing democracy here, there, or other places. Well, America is overall a good country doing great things for those people and their own people, so we'll give it a pass. Well, now the hood, shall we say, has been lifted, and now America is being seen as the fascist dictatorship it has been for quite some time. And Europe is being shown with its pants around its ankles with the same issues burgeoning forth. Whereas China is now able to sit on its, shall we say, throne and say, look at what we have built. Look at what we have brought you, my brothers and sisters. Look at what we have built together outside of these Western powers who deigned to look down upon you. These are the powers that looked upon you with disgust and contempt. Now look at them. Look at their great works. Look at their once mighty empires, and look how they crumble. Look upon China, the People's Republic of China. Look upon us, and look upon what we do for you. We support you, Venezuela. We will help you build your ports and your seas and your economy. Look upon us, Brazil. We will unite with you as equals in this trade agreement. Look upon you, India. We will elevate you and support you and defend you when they had literally occupied you for centuries, as they occupied me once upon a time. China is literally the rebel country that has thrown off the yoke of imperialism and is showing other countries who have been victims of imperialism that they too can thrive. And globally, the Chinese flag is being seen in the same light as the American flag once was. And the inability for us to accept and come to terms with that, let alone to reflect and do better, is our ultimate downfall, and will continue to be our downfall until we start reclaiming our power and identity as Americans, as people, as a society and a country. So, went off on a little tangent there. Sorry about that. And I think that pretty much covers the Japan thing. Speaking of China, there's some China for us.
President Trump is in Japan for the second leg of his nearly week-long trip through Asia. Earlier, he met with Japan's emperor at the Imperial Palace, and in just a few hours, he'll hold talks with Japan's first female prime minister. But the White House appears laser-focused on the most consequential meeting of the trip, a pivotal sit-down with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Oh, wow. So Trump and Xi Jinping are finally going to have an eye-to-eye sit-down. That is not going to bode well. That is not boding well for the United States.
First of Trump's second term.
It's not going to bode well for the United States because of Trump, not because we shouldn't be engaging in diplomatic and trade relations with China, because we absolutely should. But this idiotic administration is not going to be able to do this well.
Now, speaking to reporters on Air Force One, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talked up the framework for a potential trade truce with China, while President Trump made clear it's not done yet.
We have a framework for President Trump, President Xi to decide on, and we discussed a wide range of things from tariffs, trade, fentanyl, substantial purchase of U.S. agricultural products.
And rare earths.
And,
right?
rare earths.
Most of
But nothing has been agreed to yet.
How do you feel
But
about
we feel good. We're going to have a great talk. I have a lot of respect for President.
The fuck? He is talking out of his ass. Every other tweet, every other word that comes out of his mouth is anti-China, anti-Xi, anti-any of that nonsense. And he's sitting here saying, I have a lot of respect for President Xi. I like him a lot, and he likes me back. China beats you at your own fucking game because China doesn't have to play it. You dense motherfucker.
I like him a lot. He likes me a lot, I believe.
Wow.
And respects me, and I think he respects our country a lot.
No, the fuck he doesn't, because of you.
Have a successful transaction.
I'm joined by a terrific group of reporters here at the table. CNN's Manu Raju, Sungmin Kim of the Associated Press, CNN's Isaac Dovere, and Julia Yaffe of Puck. She's also the author.
So what? This is a roundtable of MSM journalists? Is that what I'm seeing here?
Of a brand new book, Motherland, A Feminist History of Modern Russia from Revolution to Autocracy, which we will talk about later in the show. I'm very excited to talk to you about that. Let's start with the news of the president's trip to Asia. Sungmin, you cover the White House. What are you hearing from your sources about how it's going so far?
Well, what's been really interesting, well, first of all, they think this trip so far has been very successful. Obviously, his first stop was in Malaysia, where he presided over this peace deal ceremony that he has touted so often. But the real focus of this trip is his meeting with Xi Jinping. And what I found really interesting about the comments from the top trade officials and the top and Scott Bessent earlier today was that they really are laying the groundwork in a way that we don't often see from this administration. President Trump likes to kind of have these these impromptu meetings. But this is kind of what happens in a standard administration. There are lots of legwork, a lot of preparatory work that goes in advance of a big meeting with the principals, and you saw that with both sides declaring a preliminary consensus on a potential trade deal. But now President Trump is President Trump, and nothing is agreed to until he meets with President Xi. And he's really, as usual, promoting his personal relationships with him to try to secure a good deal for the U.S.
Yeah, it's such a good point because...
But how is he promoting personal relationships with Xi Jinping when there isn't any? Like, there is literally... We barely have diplomatic relations with China because of this fucking clown. So, what do you mean we have a positive relationship with the president of China? This is... And the fact that they're just brazenly talking about this on a CNN panel as if it's reality. Can you just stop doing the propaganda for 5 seconds?
We have seen, particularly with Russia and Ukraine, and even to a lesser extent in the Mideast, the president just kind of winging it and going with his instinct. I think it's probably the most true in Russia and Ukraine. But in this particular case, he is letting his people work out ahead of time. And let's look at what we're talking about for this framework of a trade deal. Further cooperation to stem the flow of fentanyl into the U.S., China to buy substantial amounts of U.S. soybeans. China could delay export controls on rare earth minerals, and finalizing a deal to transfer TikTok ownership.
So, this is the...
I think China
pause,
is a lot more complicated.
All right. So, let's recap right now. Hold on. Are you serious? Stop being a pain in my ass for 5 fucking minutes. Can you just... stop. I didn't press any other fucking buttons.
President Trump is in Japan.
All I fucking did is pause. Right here on the fucking chart, and you want to go and do your own fucking thing. Jesus. Alright, so. Sorry about that. This is what the trade deal is about. Alright? So, this is what we're talking about and recovering. Son of a bitch. No. Something. This doesn't want to be fully covered anymore, I guess. Whatever. I guess I'll deal with that later. Some other time, maybe. Because I don't know why all of a sudden this wants to be a problem for me. Why? Why are you being a pain in my ass right now? Did this get moved? Maybe I tripped over it at some point. It is possible. All right. Anyway. I guess I'll deal with that at some point. Anyway. Sorry, guys. The illusion of hiding in the bunker, right? Anyway. The Chinese-American framework. Further cooperation to stem the flow of fentanyl into the United States. I thought that was Mexico's problem, right? I thought that was happening from Mexico and the cartels. But whatever. I guess we're blaming China for that as well. So, I think we already had that agreement, but whatever. The second point. Substantial amounts of U.S. soybeans. Something that was already happening prior to the tariffs. We were already selling billions of dollars of soybeans to China. And then we slapped tariffs on China, and China bought $0 of soybeans. 20 billion to 0. So the trade deal that we're working on with China includes something that we were already doing prior to this administration's stupidity. So we, on the framework of fentanyl, that might be, I don't know, that might be a win. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that that is a win. China to buy substantial amounts of soybeans is a loss because that brings us back to the middle. So that basically cancels this out. China could delay export controls on rare earth metals. Again, we were already getting rare earth metals from China in the first fucking place up until we decided to put tariffs on them. And then China was like, well, then fuck you too. We're not going to export rare earth metals to you. So those are two things that were already fucking happening that not only cancel out the one good thing that we are giving the benefit of the doubt to, but is still a net loss for the American people because those two things literally existed prior to this deal. And then on top of that, the transfer of TikTok ownership, which is a problem that was invented by the Biden administration so that Palantir could get full control over every social media network in the United States of America. Again, a problem that was created by us. So that is 3 losses and one that might have been a gain, which is still a net loss of 2. On 4 points, we are still net 2 in the negative. We are in the negative. We are in the red by 2 major points in this trade deal alone because of this administration's abject stupidity. That is not how international trade is supposed to function. That is not how it's supposed to operate. That's not how any of this is supposed to work or function or operate. And just like his first administration, he created a problem, made it worse for everybody. Then when he got us back to the fucking starting line, he patted himself on the back and said, look at what I have accomplished. The reality is, if we get back to these 3 things, these 4 things, if these 4 things happen, we are at the starting line. We are literally back to the starting line. Barely back to the starting line at that. And China has already resolved the soybean equation and doesn't need to export rare earth metals to America in the first place. Everybody needs it. That's why they're called rare earth minerals. So, just wanted to point out the abject stupidity of this deal.
Finalizing a deal to transfer TikTok ownership.
Well, I think China is a lot more complicated than Russia, and we have a lot more leverage with China, and China has a lot more leverage with us. We're much more interconnected than we are.
Julia Lough is literally high, probably on fentanyl. We have 0 leverage over China, as has been proven by the fact that China looked us dead in our eyes, looked us dead in our pupils, unblinking, and said, fuck around and find out. And brazenly, our president said, her, tariffs. And China said, bet. And we have been fucked ever since. Again, our entire agricultural industry is crumbling simply because China didn't buy soybeans from us. Our entire agricultural industry, the entire industry, was dedicated to exporting soybeans to China. No other country. China. China was the sole importer of our soybeans, which is also stupid trade deals, by the way. You don't just put all your eggs in one basket just in case that basket goes away, right? That's like the number one. Anyway, our entire soybean agricultural economy was predicated on China buying from us. And when they didn't, not bought less, didn't buy, it screwed $20 billion worth of farmers, of soybeans, of livelihood, hundreds of thousands upon millions of acres, tens of thousands of farmers and their livelihood, and their workers and their employees. Fucked for the past 10 months. That's leverage. That is China holding all of the cards, eating the tariffs to the chin, which again, are tariffs, are things that we pay. So the fact that that didn't impact China at all should have been a fucking clue that tariffs aren't something that deals with China. China took that on the chin and found other people to trade with. Immediately, within 30 days, I believe it was. They had other buyers lined up, or other people to buy soybeans from. And guess what? We're still buying shit that is manufactured in China. See, that's leverage. We slapped 200% tariffs on China. China said, I don't know why you're doing this to yourselves, but knock yourself out. And we were still forced to buy manufactured goods from China. It didn't cost China a damn thing. China still made the exact same money, paid the exact same amount of wages. We paid twice as much for the same thing. It affected China zero. That's leverage. We do not fucking have leverage. If we did, China might have balked. Oh, they're going to take back manufacturing and plop it in the United States. That would have been leverage. Hey, this tariff means my U.S. industries are no longer going to buy cheap manufactured goods from you. We're going to manufacture them cheaper here in America, or at the equivalent rate that the tariff is now balancing out. If we bought them from you, we can just make it for the same price here. But that's the problem. It's allegedly 4 or 5 times more expensive to manufacture the same stuff in the United States, if we even have the capability to manufacture them, right? And that's because of corporate greed. Let's make no illusions there. That isn't because of wages or benefits. That's because corporations still want to make bajillions of dollars of profit and give themselves multi-billion-dollar golden parachutes. If it was actual profit distribution the way it should be, it probably would be as cheap or cheaper to manufacture things in the United States. But I digress. That is how you do trade negotiations using tariffs as a weapon. Hey, it's cheaper. It is cheaper to buy things in your country, to make them in your country right now. If we slap this amount of tariffs on there, it's going to be equal, and we're just going to take that manufacturing away from your country. That hurts China. That is how a tariff hurts another country. When you recall goods or trade or manufacturing from that other country. But if all you're doing is making shit more expensive for yourself and still using the same country the same rate you were using them before, it's brazen stupidity. Brazen stupidity.
Are with Russia, where we cut off trade ages ago, and there's almost no trade to speak of between Russia and the U.S. And China has...
And check it out. Russia hasn't struggled one fucking bit because of BRICS. Because Russia is still a country with a large manufacturing capability, a large population, and a lot of things other countries need, like natural oil, like gas and oil, which Europe literally depends on. So, okay, America isn't trading with Russia, but Europe has to trade with Russia. And now Brazil, Russia, India, China. Why can't I remember S? Why do I never remember S? We just talked about this. Son of a bitch. I guess I'm going to just have to... Pain in my fucking ass. South Africa. I don't know why I keep forgetting that. So, let's put that in my stream links, just so I don't forget. Anyway, those 5 countries created an international trade network that is growing by the day. Russia doesn't need Europe. Europe needs Russia. Russia doesn't need America. I guess for the most part, America doesn't need Russia either. But that's the point. Russia still is net positive in that because Europe needs Russia. So even if they lose America, they're still winning because Europe is still dependent on Russia. Like, these clowns can only talk about Cold War antics. That's it. That's all they got. Cold War talking points that have not been relevant since 2015. When did BRICS form? Oh, 2001. And then again, or I guess, let's see, 2006? 2008, 2011. All right, so since 2011, Cold War talking points have not been relevant. Arguably starting back in 2001. But still, between 2001 and 2011, that was the end of anything resembling the Cold War being relevant and those talking points mattering. And they cannot stop talking about that era at all.
He's been playing hardball right back at President Trump. And so he's had to make some compromises, as he said, just as China, which is teetering a little bit economically, has had.
In what universe is China? I'm sure Google's gonna... Moderate growth forecasts around 4.8 to 5%. Okay. USA economic situation 2025. So, no matter how you fucking slice it, America is forecasted to grow between 1.9 to 2.5% with inflation at 2.5 to 3. China is growing with 4.8 to 5%. With a forecast, between 4.8 to 5. So, in what fucking universe is China's economy struggling when it is outperforming the United States economy by up to a factor of 3? Relatively speaking. Right. How is China teetering when it is outperforming us at worst by a factor of 2 and at best by a factor of 3? Like, the propaganda... We are literally being fed lies and a false narrative. We are literally being given... we are witnessing or being fed a false reality. Anybody who is watching and listening to this with just tunnel vision is living in a completely different reality. We are still on planet Earth in 2025, October 29th, but it is a completely alternate universe. It may as well be Earth 616 or 127 or with the planet of the fucking apes. Because this reality it does not exist. This is a complete fabrication. It is no different than this book or this book. Like, what she is talking about is fiction. It is literal fiction. That's propaganda. I think we need to stop watching this. That's nuts. Well, we need to stop watching this panel, but unfortunately there's only so many places that give videos about foreign affairs that we can
breakthrough.
At least take with a grain of salt. I think that's still talking about the framework. Oh, rich people's feelings have improved thanks to the China deal. So let's...
Garrett Hake is in Japan for us tonight. And Garrett, expectations for that meeting have already sparked a rally setting new highs on Wall Street.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ all hitting record highs today, driven by optimism that President Trump and China's President Xi will strike a deal on tariffs and trade when they meet on Thursday.
Whenever the stock market
American
goes
and Chinese
up,
negotiators have both
just
spoken
assume
positively
it's
about a
fascism
framework
winning.
agreement that could involve lower tariffs and more Chinese purchasing of U.S. farm products like soybeans. Comes as President Trump begins a full day of meetings here in Japan after briefly greeting the emperor upon arriving in Tokyo last night. Today, he's set to hash out finer points of a trade agreement with Japan, including Japanese investments in the U.S., as well as purchases of U.S.-made cars and trucks.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on...
That wasn't very informative, but sure. Yeah, we'll go with that. All right, so this is still the framework. All right. So let's go ahead and do something fun and whimsical.
Tonight,
the gentleman
we're learning
thieves
dramatic
of
new details about the arrest
Louvre.
of 2 suspects in the Louvre jewel
Oh,
heist.
look, there is
Both
footage
men are
of
in their
them.
early 30s and have criminal records for jewelry theft. One arrested at Paris's Charles de Gaulle airport just 40 minutes before his flight to Algeria was due to take off.
Oh, so they actually
That's
caught
according
one.
to Chief Brigadier Axel Rons, a police official and union rep. We're dealing with experienced criminals who are known to the police and the justice system, he says, adding, there are more than 150 police officers working tirelessly 24 hours a day to recover the jewels. He told us officers from an elite unit tracked the suspects for several days after matching DNA left at the Louvre crime scene to a police database. Somewhere inside of this vast police headquarters is an interrogation room where the suspects are being questioned by detectives. Under French law, they can be held without charge until Wednesday evening. But officials say at least 2 gang
I like how many democratic states have laws in place that allow people to be held without charge for multiple days or weeks or indefinitely. Because nothing screams democracy like indefinite detention without charge, i.e. no due process. So those are the only 2 they caught? Okay. And the one guy was caught at the airport, which, buddy, you probably shouldn't have gone to the airport. That has extremely high security settings and systems in place. What you should have done is caught a boat, a literal, honest-to-God boat. That could have probably gotten you where you needed to go. But, c'est la vie.
Members and possibly a wider network are still at large, and so far, no sign of the stolen treasures.
Are you confident you'll find the jewels before the gang chops them up?
Unfortunately, in these investigations, we often find the perpetrators, but only some of the stolen items.
But that official also says it's encouraging the arrests were made here in Paris because it suggests the treasures may still be in the city. Tom?
We thank you for watching.
Well, we're going to find out during the Netflix special all the details in about 10 years. But it's just kind of crazy that while fascism is on the rise in the world, we're getting a actual, like, band of merry gentlemen thieves stealing royal jewelry during the No Kings protests that are basically happening across the globe as a direct result of combating fascism. And in the news, it's barely even making the news. It's barely being given, a minute and a half on even syndicated networks, right? Probably because they saw what happened with Luigi. People are just going to support the thieves. And that is honestly the kind of society where we're in, where the gentleman thief rogue is being held to a higher standard than the kings and queens of the city or the state. So that's mildly amusing. I'm glad we got to pepper that in there. All right, so let's see.
We begin today's show looking at the Trump administration's escalating threats
right
of
here,
war
yeah.
against Venezuela and the region. On Sunday, the U.S. docked a warship in Trinidad and Tobago. The Pentagon's also deployed the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, which can hold at least 90 airplanes and attack helicopters, with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro accusing the Trump administration of fabricating a new eternal war.
Which is exactly what they're doing.
And the people of the United States know that they're making up a new eternal war. They promise that they will never enter a war, and they're making up a war that we will avoid. How? With the mobilization of the peoples of South America. As South America and the Caribbean all say, no to war, yes to peace, yes to prosperity, yes to harmony, and living together.
There are approximately 10,000 U.S. troops, both at sea and on shore in the Caribbean, many stationed in Puerto Rico. Meanwhile, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth Friday confirmed the U.S. had struck another vessel in the Caribbean, killing at least 6 people, whom Hegseth accused without evidence of being drug traffickers. The U.S. has carried out at least 8 naval strikes on boats in the Caribbean and 2 others on vessels in the Pacific Ocean, killing over altogether 40 people. The Trump
So this right here, though, this infuriates me. It feels so personal. I know it's weird that, I mean, obviously I'm losing my mind over just about everything that is being discussed, right? But this hits entirely too close to home. I served my country. I was active duty Air Force for 6 years. I was in the reserves for 6 years. Thank God I was never put in a position to have to challenge orders that were given to me. But I always thought, apparently naively, that everybody who enlisted or commissioned in the military would never willingly go out of their way to commit war crimes, to follow unlawful orders, to target our own citizens in our own cities, to engage in extrajudicial killings in international waters. I just assumed that I received the same training that they received. The law of armed conflict, the Geneva Conventions training, use of force training, firearms qualification training, so on and so forth, that all of these things were drilled into our head. Do not do these things. Do not follow unlawful orders. Do not kill. The rules of engagement state you are not allowed to kill until fired upon, or to whatever else. Make sure that they are the enemy. Make sure you have verified that they are a lawful target before engaging. Those were things that were hammered into me in basic training, tech school, and every single day, month, year I was in the military, active duty and reserves. And to see people gleefully deploying into our own cities and gleefully murdering people off the coast of these countries, when it is being reported internationally over and over again that these are just fishermen trying to get a living accomplished, and the Secretary of Defense and this president continue the lie, the brazen lie that they were drug dealers and cartels, is unconscionable. And we have to put a stop to this. Because we can argue all day long that we haven't been the good guys for a very long time, but this is absolutely this is indefensible. We are extrajudicially murdering third country nationals in their own sovereign waters just to stir up conflict and justify our position in the region. That's just not okay. And so it's Rubio that's doing the manipulating. I guess maybe that's what's going to be
Administration Friday
here.
Also announced sanctions against Colombian President Gustavo Petro, his family, as well as Colombian Interior Minister, swelling tensions between the U.S. and Colombia. Last week, Petro recalled Colombia's ambassador to the U.S. back to Bogota and recently accused the U.S. of committing murder for killing a Colombian fisherman in one of the Trump administration's boat attacks on the Caribbean in mid-September. Trump responded by calling Petro a lunatic and a, quote, illegal drug leader. Petro has also blasted the U.S. for attempting to destabilize the region under the guise of combating drug trafficking. President Petro spoke at a massive rally in Bogota Friday following news of the U.S. sanctions against him.
Pues de ahí tenemos que aprender.
To the current government of Donald Trump, we must not respond by kneeling. We must respond, as humanity has already done, by standing firm and taking to the streets to defend people's rights, the rights of democracy, not to be governed by tyrannies. I've never done business. I don't have $1 in the United States. There's no account to freeze. I have no desire, and I never will, to do business in the United States.
For more, we're joined in our New York studio by Alejandro Velasco, associate professor at NYU, where he's a historian of modern Latin America. Antonio Velasco is a former executive editor of NACLA Report on the Americas and author of Barrio Rising, Urban Popular Politics and the Making of Modern Venezuela. He was born and raised in Venezuela. Professor Alejandro Velasco, it's great to have you with us. Let's start off with the latest U.S. attack, bringing to 10 the number of vessels the U.S. has bombed in the Caribbean and the Pacific.
It's horrifying on so many levels. On the one hand, of course, we have these competing interests that are in fact converging within the Trump administration. You have those who are intent on ousting the Venezuelan government, especially Marco Rubio. You have Pete Hegseth, who's intent on starting war, even though Trump has said that he doesn't want to start wars. You have expat oppositions, including Maria Corina Machado, who has openly said that they want an intervention and then to be able to provide the United States with Venezuela's oil.
She just won the Nobel Peace
who
Prize.
Just won the Nobel Peace Prize.
President Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize.
In fact, it said that it should have been him, and that she gave the award to him on his honor. And so all of these competing and conflicting interests that in other situations might not in fact align are seeing Venezuela as an instrumental piece in order to achieve their own particular ends. And of course, who's left out of this equation are Venezuelans in Venezuela, who would suffer tremendously the brunt of a chaotic invasion.
I wanted to turn to President Trump last week.
Sorry, I kind of needed to... I like to interject a lot, but sometimes it is just better to hear it from the experts. And quite frankly, he's not saying anything that we haven't said ourselves. And he has a lot more authority on the subject than I do. And he remembered the names that I forgot, right? So this is, again, a less intelligent manufacturing of the global war on terror. Because at least 9/11 happened on American soil as the excuse to go into the Middle East, and then wasting 11 years unable to find Osama bin Laden. And then even after we got Osama bin Laden, well, we can't just leave the Middle East because it'll become destabilized. And now ISIS is forming, right? We kept manufacturing more and more boogeymen in the Middle East to keep us there for as long as fucking possible. We're not even doing that here. We are literally murdering fishermen on their way to work to go fishing and trying to turn that into a new global war on terror. This is ridiculous. It's unconscionable. It's indefensible, and it needs to be held accountable. Again, we toppled this regime through our unity and through our numbers, right? By demanding the steps that we need, right? We demand the government to be reopened. We demand the Congress people to do their jobs. And failing to do that, we demand them to be removed, right? We make our demands and escalate our demands until we can hold these pieces of garbage accountable and actually have them sent to jail and indicted for war crimes like this. But it starts with food, wages, shelter, and healthcare. We have to build this mantra, because that is the first step. That is the first step. The second step is building our numbers and creating our unity. Our third step is holding our government accountable. And our fourth is finally holding them to account for this shit, indicting them. Accountability and then indictments.
Asserting he had the authority to continue to launch airstrikes against boats in international waters without a congressional declaration of war.
I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay?
And it's just brazenly saying that.
They're going to be like dead.
We're just going to kill them. They're going to be like dead. I mean, even Republican Congressman Rand Paul, the Kentucky senator, objected, speaking on Fox News Sunday.
The Constitution says that when you go to war, Congress has to vote on it. And during a war, then, there's a lower rules for engagement. People do sometimes get killed without due process. But the drug war or the crime war has typically been something we do through law enforcement. And so far, they have alleged that these people are drug dealers. No one said their name. No one said what evidence. No one said whether they're armed. And we've had no evidence presented. So at this point, I would call them extrajudicial killings. And this is akin.
Wow! That is probably the most hopeful thing I have ever heard come out of this fucker's mouth, is calling these extrajudicial killings on Fox News. It's a Republican saying it, not a Democrat. Just goes to show, again, the sheer level of cowardice and incompetence within the Democratic Party. It takes, and he's a Tea Party. He's not even really a Republican. Just like Bernie isn't really a Democrat, or is now, I guess, but wasn't for a long time. Like, I cannot fucking believe it's Rand Paul calling out what it is instead of AOC, Bernie Sanders, Mamdani, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary fucking Clinton. I don't know. Rand Paul. That who's calling it out.
To what China does, to Iran does with drug dealers, they summarily execute people without presenting evidence to the public, so it's wrong.
Just to be clear, that's Republican Senator Rand Paul. Professor
Which is very
Alejandro
confusing.
Velasco,
I get why she has to reiterate
response.
that.
Again, they haven't pretended even to present evidence on either the strikes in the Pacific or in the Caribbean. The number of people killed, at least 40 at this point.
Part of it is a show of force, not only to Venezuela and the region, but it's also a show of force domestically to opponents in the United States whose activism is increasing, to say that they are, in fact, above the law, that they do not care about the law. Yes, they can, talk about what and how this fits into particular frameworks of the past and precedent, but the reality is that you even now have Republicans coming out and saying, no, this is not only illegal, but this is in the context of lack of oversight, extrajudicial killings.
So talk about the sanctioning also of Colombia at the same time. I mean, escalating pressure in all of these areas. And Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, who had that double title before, I think it was Henry Kissinger.
That's right.
Now wielding immense power.
Hold on, what?
Before, I think, and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, who had that double title before, I think it was Henry Kissinger.
That's right.
Now wielding immense power. He has had a long time vendetta against Nicolas Maduro. Talk about how much power he's wielding at this point. As President Trump in the last few hours said something like, or refused to rule out a run himself for president. He also talked about Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance as a team for the 28 election.
No, absolutely. What's fascinating and disturbing about Marco Rubio is that his animosity towards Venezuela, his sort of centered-mindedness on Venezuela and ousting the government certainly precedes Maduro. It goes all the way back to Chavez. And what he has discovered now, with the power that he has, is that his agenda, which is primarily ideological, he primarily just wants to get rid of the Cuban government, right? That this has long been his primary mission.
He's Cuban American.
He is Cuban American. And so he knows that he can't sell Trump on ideology. He can't sell Trump on the idea we're going to commit troops, we're going to commit a ground invasion just on the basis of ousting a communist. So he has to find other ways to do that, and he's found it through drugs, right? But in order to make that more of a credible threat, he also has to tie it to Colombia, which is a major drug producer in the way that Venezuela is not. So in some ways, Petro here has become involved in this larger kind of effort to frame what's going on in the Caribbean and in Venezuela in particular as a larger war on drugs, when in fact it's primarily Marco Rubio's ideological project.
So
and if we have literally a president that is being led around by the nose, not just by world leaders, but by his own cabinet for their own personal vendettas, and he just keeps blindly signing off on and supporting and endorsing them, then we literally have a league of villains in charge with a figurehead who just wants to be celebrated and elevated above all else. Like, these are some of the most dangerous and disturbing things to have ever come out of the United States of America in the presidency or in an administration. This is unheard of. This is dangerous. And it is so overt at this point that, again, we cannot simply ignore it and hope that this too shall pass. This is only going to escalate. And let me be very clear. This is only going to escalate. This is only going to escalate. This shit with Venezuela, Colombia, the trade war with China, deploying the Gestapo in our major cities, deploying the National Guard in our major cities, the governors refusing to actually oust them, the trying to steal elections, the trying to manipulate elections. These things are going to escalate. The government shutdown is going to escalate. These are stepping stones to control, to unmitigated power, to absolute power. Maybe not a monarchy, right? Because that is the one thing this administration will never be able to do, is declare themselves king or emperor. But president for life, president for 3 terms, the party declares this person as the next president. At some point, a generation or two, if this continues unchecked, yeah, it will be an empire. It will be a monarchy. It'll be something like that. But right now, we're heading towards total control. Complete and total control. And we have a voice. We have a voice that we can wield as a weapon in numbers, in our hundreds, in our thousands, in our millions, in our tens of millions, and even our hundreds of millions. We can combine our voices. And it starts with food, shelter, wages, healthcare. I keep switching shelter and wages. I guess whichever one floats your boat the most. Food, shelter, wages, healthcare. I guess I keep changing it now. Food, wages, shelter, healthcare. Fwish. Fswa. Fwiss. Doesn't really matter. Food, shelter, wages, healthcare. I guess that's what my brain is sticking to now. It starts with food, shelter, wages, and healthcare. And that seed will blossom into education, will blossom into police reform, will blossom into industrial revolution, public ownership, and accountability for crimes against humanity by the people in power. But it starts with that seed, and we have to water it in our numbers. We are the water. We're the wet that gives that seed life. Food, shelter, wages, healthcare. It doesn't seem intuitive. It seems counterintuitive. I agree. Food, shelter, wages, healthcare. Sorry, Simply, I wasn't trying to ignore you. Even Fox News is reporting on the very visible conflict happening in the GOP and Congress, which is another saving grace, that there is a schism forming in the GOP, that they aren't a unified front, because that is actually the Republican strength. If the Republicans have one thing going for them, it's the fact that they are a unified front, that they are ride or die. We are here for the mission and to win it. That's all Republicans have cared about for decades. And now that they have finally won, now they're breaking into camps, which is only going to benefit us, because that means somebody like me running as a Republican, but bringing up Eisenhower Republicanism, might finally have an option, might finally have a voice, might be able to set a foot on the stage of Republicanism, on the platform, and talk about populism, talking about building a country, about fighting for food, shelter, healthcare, wages. Well, now wages is at the back. you get where I'm going with this, right? As a Republican in a fracturing party and a Democratic neoliberal party that is coming together for all of the wrong reasons, the fracturing of the major ideologies, neoliberalism versus leftism, neoconservatism versus, I guess, everybody else. There's 4 main camps, which is great. There are 4 main groups. That is fantastic. That means a 5th can grow, a 6th, a 7th, or an 8th. The more of us that there are peeling away, scratching away at these fragmented parts, the stronger we become and the weaker they become, which allows us to put a foot in the door. Food, shelter, wages, healthcare. A cult. They are definitely a cult. Both of them are. I already put my spiritual beliefs prevent me from serving Trump voter sign in my store. That's fucking awesome. I already beaten 2 lawsuits. I use the same defense as the baker. That's outstanding, Steve. Hey, $2,300 is the maximum donation that you're allowed to make. Just kidding. Do not give me $2,300. You need that money more than I do. But you know what? If we can win lawsuits and use those winnings of the lawsuits like across the country, that could fuel the organization, or at the very least the messaging that'll get people into the streets. That's actually that is actually one way to do it. That is a very, you've won lawsuits, man. That is impressive. That is not easy to do in capitalist hellscape America. I mean, bravo. Bravo. And I mean that with absolute seriousness. All right. Probably shouldn't have had that slice of pie while I'm not feeling great. But I stress eat when I'm doing these because these are extremely stressful. Let's go on, but I might not be talking as much. On this next video.
Life in Court of Spain continues mostly as normal. But the shadow of conflict hangs over the city. A U.S. warship is docked less than a kilometer from here. The Trinidadian government insists there is nothing to be concerned about. But during possibly the most tense period in the region's recent history, the people of this island, which lies so close to Venezuela they can see it on a clear day, would be forgiven for thinking otherwise.
Is that ship arriving at the request of Trinidad or the United States?
That ship is arriving at the request of the U.S.
Defense Minister Wayne Sturch spoke exclusively to Al Jazeera.
And, of course, Trinidad and Tobago probably could... I mean, so I don't think people really understand how absolutely devastating an aircraft carrier is in terms of military power. Just to put it in perspective, that particular carrier was able to field 90 aircraft and helicopters. 90 fighter craft and helicopters. Yeah. Well, that's not a lot, Sam. 90. That's a couple score, right? Okay. So, Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Where's the military? Army. They have 4 battalions. 4 total battalions. A special forces, a coast guard, and a fleet. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 boats. 17 boats. And they have 6 total aircraft. We have 90 fighter pilots, fighter jets, 90 fighter craft on one boat, plus the personnel to man the boat and the fighter craft and the helicopters. That one boat has enough firepower to destroy every single one of these vessels, all six of their aircraft. And I think the C-26 is, that's not even a fighter craft. That looks more like that looks like the size of a private jet. And those are helicopters. So a private jet and 4 helicopters versus 90 fighter craft, F-15s to F-22s. That one aircraft carrier has enough military power to destroy, to literally turn Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force into a literal parking lot. Without question. They wouldn't even, the one aircraft could probably do it. I think, how many missiles can an F-22 Raptor carry in one flight? So, 8 missiles.
This is what allows the F-22 to perform some absolutely ridiculous maneuvers that almost seem to defy the laws of physics themselves.
Okay, well, we're not going to watch a fucking propaganda thing. But my point is 8 missiles. That means one F-22, fully kitted out, can destroy the entire Trinidad Air Force. And depending on the level of the power of those missiles, I don't know how big that craft is. Like, I don't know the scale. But if it's a small craft, a fighter jet like the Raptor with I think they carry Hellfire missiles, could probably sink a vessel. So again, one F-22 Raptor with a full payload could take out, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, then I am wrong, can take out all of the entire Trinidad and Tobago's Air Force and up to 2 ships. One F-22 Raptor can take out all of the Air Force and up to 2 ships. And there are 90 of these aircraft on that one ship. I don't think people truly appreciate that a single aircraft carrier is a mobile fortress. It is literally a mobile air wing. Naval wing, I guess, because it's an aircraft carrier. And the sheer amount of power and devastation that one aircraft carrier can So, boat, right? Mobile. Can go anywhere where there's water. Big water, right? A fighter jet has anywhere between 1 hour to 3 hours worth of range, flight range, before it needs to refuel, depending on how fast it's going, right? An hour at 600 miles per hour or upwards of Mach 3? 4? I think it's Mach 3. Mach 2.5. Okay, so I'm sorry. It's only Mach 2.5. 2.25. So, twice the speed of sound. It can travel, I believe, an hour at that speed before needing to turn around. And I think at 3 hours, it can go at just 600 miles per hour like a regular commercial craft. So, 3 hours worth of travel before it needs to refuel. While on a mobile floating fortress. The devastation that can cause to a country or to anything is ridiculous. And that is the largest aircraft carrier in the United States military that hosts 90 aircraft. 90 aircraft with 8 missiles. Plus, the part of what the aircraft carrier carries is more missiles. I don't know how many more. That's probably classified. But what you can find on the internet paints a pretty bleak picture for anybody on the receiving end of an aircraft carrier. 90 aircraft, 8 missiles. 720 missiles within 3 hours worth of range. That is an overwhelming majority of every single country's on Earth, Air Force and Navy. 720 missiles. French Air Force. I don't even think the French Air Force has... So, the French Air Force has 520 aircraft. The entire French Air Force has 520 aircraft, and one aircraft carrier could devastate the entire French Air Force and still have missiles left over. So, I just kind of want to point out that putting a warship of that scale and capacity anywhere, while also engaging in extrajudicial killings in those same waters, is a threat, is a damn near declaration of war. It is intent. It is not a deterrent. It is intent. Especially when you have Marco Rubio in the ear of the most vain narcissistic person to ever sit in the Oval Office in our nation's history. St. Andrew did a live stream on the H situation in Trinidad and Venezuela. I don't know who St. Andrew is, so sorry about that. No intel gave great extra result. AA missiles haven't been invented yet. If you're attempting to troll, that is one of the weakest trolls we've had, because AA missiles usually can't keep up with hypersonic speeds. And the F-22 Raptor has a shit ton of capabilities to thwart those actions. Okay, just being sure, because we get trolls a lot on this channel, for, as you can imagine. Again, I was on an Air Force base where the F-22 Raptor existed, was being tested, and where pilots were being used in the Pacific Theater. So I know a little bit of the capabilities of the F-22 Raptor from my own two eyes. And I can assure you that Trinidad and Tobago do not have the anti-air systems necessary to take down an F-22 Raptor. And in fact, China and Russia are just now at the point of being able to develop those systems. Now, granted, Chinese and Russian 5th or 6th generation aircraft are a match for the F-22 Raptor, which is why we started the F-35. And I think we're working on another one now. Suffice to say that this country has every right to be afraid and respond to this interview like, yeah, the Americans want it to be here, and we're literally not going to do anything about it because we literally can't do anything about it. And if we did, we would become a subjugated colony within 5 seconds of raising a finger against them. So, again, this cannot be stressed enough that just by putting that aircraft carrier in the waters at all near Venezuela or Trinidad or Tobago is the closest thing to an unofficial, or to the closest thing to a declaration of war, short of actual saying it, that the United States can get to without actually needing congressional approval at this stage in the game. Pretty soon, with the ongoing government shutdown and the erosion of congressional powers, and of course the capitulation of those powers, they might just give Trump what he wants anyway. And at that point, it's going to be rough. Okay, I'm not arguing with you that there aren't anti-air systems that can take out F-22s. I'm saying I don't believe any country in South America or Africa has them. I'm pretty sure those are typically only in the larger militaries, which would be your Russia, your China, and your European countries. Maybe Brazil, but Brazil doesn't seem to be keen on interjecting either.
We begin today's show looking at the Trump administration's escalated.
All right. These videos are, like, this mouse is really damn sensitive. All right. Which countries have the S-300 AA missile systems? China, Iran, Egypt, Syria, Greece. Oh, Venezuela actually has them. All right. I will take back at least one part of what I was saying. Venezuela does have the capability to defend itself. Trinidad and Tobago most certainly does not. But I will take that back. I was mistaken. There are South American countries that have them. That's apparently not enough of a deterrent, though, for this aggression. And I would also venture to guess that just because they have the system doesn't mean they have an infinite supply. I wonder if it'll talk about stockpiles. The total production was 3,000 launchers and 28,000 missiles. Yeah, see, that wouldn't be enough. But they're not going to talk about all of that in a Wikipedia article, I suppose, for the newer systems. But suffice to say, you're right. They are there. It is absolutely a thing. And Venezuela does have them. But the fact that Venezuela isn't touting it makes me wonder if they are just not confident in their ability to do it, or if, of course, they want to try and de-escalate tensions. I've been sharing your website with people all over Colorado, and you have a lot of support here. Would you consider doing your first campaign rally in Denver? Shit, son. That's as good a place as any. I might have to physically do it in Ohio, given that I'm living in Ohio and operating out of Ohio, and I might be an Ohio representative this time next year. or hold on, the general election next year would be the first week of November. So on my way to becoming district, but I think it is certainly a valid consideration, and I appreciate that. Please continue driving people to the website. Driving people to anything to do with this campaign, and share with them food, wages, or food, shelter, wages, and healthcare. I think I do like the way that rolls off the tongue better. We will build our little movement as quickly as possible. The 97 model, okay. Well, I guess we went on a bit of a tangent on international anti-aircraft systems, but... Your stance on the issues really rings with people here. Dude, I'm fucking so happy to hear that. You know what? Steve, you're giving me a little bit of that hope that I needed, that little bit of positive reinforcement that I'm not just banging my head against the wall. I truly appreciate that. I won't cry on camera or anything, but I really... It is good to hear that what we're doing here is making even a small impact, because that is literally all we have been trying to accomplish with these streams for as long as we've been streaming, is just getting that ball rolling, just getting that thread through the needle and starting to sow a revolution. That's all we fucking need. So, carrying on with South America. And I appreciate that too. That website was I was truly blessed with the people who put that together. I actually adapted it from a British politician's website, and I'm really glad how well it turned out. I truly cannot speak more highly on its final output. So, carrying on with South American news, Argentina.
The people of Argentina have spoken, delivering a resounding victory for President Javier Milei and his far-right party.
I mean, is it a resounding victory if it's fascism?
La Libertad Avanza sweeping the midterm elections, winning 78 seats combined, guaranteeing Milei veto power and shielding him from impeachments. In his victory speech, Milei saying the Argentinians showed that
I don't understand how he won, though. Isn't the Argentinian economy in absolute fucking shambles? And the only reason why it's being bailed out is because the Trump administration is following suit in their Nazi footsteps to ensure they have a place to hide when the revolution comes for their heads. I don't understand why people are supporting Milei, because the Argentinian economy has suffered under Milei. Like, I don't get it. I just really fucking don't get it. Well, evidently he won a supermajority now in the midterm. So, yeah, I'm not understanding what's going on. Because Trump promised them $20 billion if they voted for him? Yeah, I guess so. But Trump said that he'd only help Argentina if they elected Milei, which is crazy. Like, that is absolute batshit insane. This whole situation, the whole scenario. So, yeah. Do with that what you will, I suppose.
They don't want to return to the failed model, to the model of inflation. One supporter saying everything that's happening is bringing happiness to the people. The win, a sign of approval of Milei's economic policy. When he
the
took
policies
office in
of making
inflation
America
was
pay
well
for
into
it?
the triple digits, now hovering around 32% by simply spending less and printing less money.
He stepped into a really nightmarish situation economically. He ended...
Oh, that's right. Now we're sanitizing what he's done to the country and sanitizing his involvement in undermining social programs, expanding capitalism, taking away public ownership of Venezuela's natural resources, being bailed out by Trump. I get it. I see what's happening. This is literally giving Milei's rehabilitation through NBC. Can we not? Like, why does our country spend so much time, energy, and effort rehabilitating bad people in every fucking country? We're trying to sanitize Netanyahu. We're rehabilitating Milei. We're waxing poetic over the Japanese PM. Like, we are going to propaganda ourselves straight into the apocalypse at this point. And it's not even funny.
Few facets of that nightmare, and now people are thankful to him for it.
The win for Milei, also a win for President Trump, who's thrown his support behind the leader.
You know, that election made a lot of money for the United States. Now, we're not
How did it make money? You're going to give him $40 billion.
Just days before the election.
And if he wins, we're staying with him. And if he doesn't win, we're gone.
After the administration announced a $20 billion crypto buyout of Argentinian pesos to help stave off a financial crisis.
Oh, so we're going to give Argentina $20 billion in crypto. Explain to me how the crypto market isn't skyrocketing from that news.
As voters headed to the polls.
This looks more like, I'm not saying a completely free gift, but an assist to a political ally.
Argentina, a key ally for the U.S. in South America.
If Trump was really focused on competing with China in South America, you might see him use his leverage there.
Milei always makes...
All right, we're seriously not going to keep fucking listening to that. I'm glad Al Jazeera was talking about it too.
The result surprised even Javier Milei's most enthusiastic supporters.
Okay, hold on a second. I just want to contrast. I want to contrast the reporting from a Western, from a Western United States of American news network versus Al Jazeera English.
Argentina have spoken, delivering a resounding victory for President Javier Milei
and
his far-right party.
Versus...
The result surprised even Javier Milei's most enthusiastic supporters.
Now, explain to me. No, this is NBC. This is NBC. Explain to me how NBC News is gushing at the success of Milei, and Al Jazeera is saying everybody, including Milei, is stunned. Right? These are two completely different stories. One a fabrication, and the other one, well, maybe a slight embellishment on the other side. I mean, it's certainly left-leaning, but like the truth are as much closer to the truth than the absolute fucking imaginary lie. Oh, your quote is from the BBC. Got you. My bad. I'm just saying, like, this is crazy. This is batshit insane. Complete fabrication, alternate reality.
41% of the vote, strengthening his Libertad Avanza party in both the Congress and Senate. In the early hours of trading on the morning after, the markets responded. The Argentinian peso rose against the US dollar, and stocks leapt 20%. The pollsters didn't predict it. Neither did most political analysts. So what changed?
Yeah, what did change? Did Milei's opponent try a Pied Piper strategy? Is that what happened? That would be fucking hilarious.
Support of Mr. Trump to Mr. Milei was very important for Milei, because 1 month ago, 2 weeks ago, Argentina was in a very big crisis.
He's talking about a heavy defeat in local elections in the populous Buenos Aires province and several high-profile corruption scandals. But that defeat was reversed. Many ignored the scandals, and that special relationship, a key factor.
Because that was a big win in Argentina. I want to congratulate.
But only if Milei won.
For stability, because inflation has come down after so many years, which keeps people poor and wages have not kept pace with their needs. But now we will move forward.
A 68% turnout was the lowest for generations, which many analysts interpret as a loss of faith in the politician.
So, a resounding victory. 1. Resounding victory. 2. Lowest voter turnout in generations. And as Anna said, 41% of the vote, which isn't a majority. Now, granted, in other countries, you can't do 50% plus 1, because there are so many different opposition parties that actually exist. But suffice to say, to that point exactly and specifically, this is exactly the same kind of lackluster victory that Trump won in his first term, where people were celebrating like, oh, this is a mandate. It's like, no, this was extremely low voter turnout. Now, granted, Trump allegedly won this time around with record high turnout, except the election rigging scandals that are not being talked about by anybody are continuing to not be talked about, which would beg a lot of the validity to question.
Both those in government and in opposition. Argentina is a test case, with Javier Milei's radical chainsaw policies being supported and watched closely by the United States and the International Monetary Fund, as well as populist anti-state allies around the world. Meanwhile, the opposition is reeling, and pensioners and those in the beleaguered education and health sectors continue to protest, seeing no hope of improvement.
Because again, what do we call that? Austerity measures were what were being put in place by Milei and all these other pieces of shit. That's how they curbed inflation, by gutting social programs. Like, that is how you fucking kill a country. Only 20% of my town showed up for our last city elections. And that's why every single city in America is trending towards conservatism, because the lower the voter turnout, the more conservative the likely outcome becomes. Because conservatives are typically diehard voters. And so the more conservative you are, the more likely you are to show up to the polls. It's ridiculous. And people here wonder why their power and water, gas, and power bills are sky high now. No, and that's exactly it. That is exactly it. Hence why food, shelter, wages, healthcare. Those are the demands we need to make, especially if they're upset with the way things are now. You can't just continue to bitch and complain and not participate in the processes that define them.
Improvement.
it's hard to expect any significant increases in the productivity of the economy. It hasn't happened over the last 2 years, and I don't see reasons for expecting that in the next 2 years.
2 years for Javier Milei with his powerful backers to fully implement his economic policies. Daniel Schweiner, Al Jazeera, Buenos Aires.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe.
Well, that was a refreshing take. At least Al Jazeera does pretty consistently good reporting and journalism on everything that isn't to do with Palestine, because they are inconsistent with Palestine, and I will say that and I will stand by that, because they do not go at Israel as hard as they should. They just don't. Nobody does. The only people who do are dipshits like me, and on occasion Hassan, and the Majority Report, and that's not always consistent. It's as it comes up in the news, right? And don't worry, we still have Palestine here, but we try to not focus so heavily on Palestine because it is deeply, deeply distressing to talk about time and time again. Again, Israel has not stopped violating the ceasefire since the ceasefire was put into place. They just killed 50 people, I think it was yesterday. So talking about the genocide that has yet to stop is extremely distressing for all the reasons that you would imagine. Argentina is headed full steam into a civil war. I mean, one could argue that we are as well, and yet we just seem to not be willing to do anything about it, broadly speaking. All right. They already got kicked out of Israel, so why do they care? That's one of my points, for sure. Israel launched a full-scale attack yesterday and killed over 100 people. Oh, so it was 100 people. So they killed 50 people at some point this week, and then yesterday another 100. And then here's a couple that say it was 20, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and cover that, actually. Actually, here's something that we should talk first about, which is the unexploded Israeli bombs in Gaza and danger returns. That's something that nobody, myself included, has been talking
buried in the ruins of Gaza. Unexploded Israeli ordnance scattered across neighborhoods, roads, and farmland. 7-year-old Yahya and his sister were playing outside when they found out what they thought looked like a toy. Their mother, Latifa Shurbasi, replays the moment over and over.
They found a regular children's toy, just an ordinary one. My daughter was holding it, and then my son took it and started tapping at it with a coin. Suddenly we heard a sound of explosion. It went off in their hands.
Yahya was a critic.
Okay. We're going to stop this video. And we're not going to stop it there. We're obviously not going to do that. Israel, via the IDF or the IOF, created improvised explosive devices, IEDs, in the form of children's toys, so that if a child found them, whether at some point in the future or during the fleeing or whatever have you, if a child picked up that toy, it would explode in their hands, possibly killing them, but definitely maiming them. I cannot state clearly enough that my official stance as a congressman, as a president, as a human fucking being is unequivocally and unabashedly fuck Israel. Fuck Zionism. Fuck the IDF. Fuck the IOF. Fuck AIPAC. And fuck Netanyahu. They need Nuremberg-style trials immediately. And there should not be any quarter given, no mercy. They created improvised explosive devices in fucking toys, targeting children with the hopes of killing children or at best maiming them. Israel is beyond conscience. They are unforgivable. Zionism is a plague on humanity. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say on that in this video. I didn't realize that was going to be the subject matter. IEDs. This is why it's extremely fucking difficult to talk about Israel and Palestine, because it is so overtly cruel and malevolent. And the victims are literally just that, victims. Whether they're children, whether they're women, whether they're elderly, whether they're just people trying to survive. They're civilians being picked apart by one of the most malevolent forces in all of human history. And that, unfortunately, includes the Nazis. The Nazis were, bar none, the most malevolent organization in all of human history. They were them. It was the Spanish Inquisition before that. The Spanish Inquisition were fucking monsters, torturing non-believers and heretics, and slaughtering the Incan, Mayan, and Aztec empires for gold and resources. The conquistadors pillaged, raped, murdered, killed, enslaved under the sun. And then 500 years later, 400 and some odd years later, the Nazis came around and turned it into a process. Going against a very specific people for a very specific purpose. And we thought that was the pinnacle. We can even argue it was the Inquisition and then it was Manifest Destiny. Or we could say it was the Inquisition and it was then the East India Trading Company and then the British Empire that was fueled by it. We could talk about the transatlantic slave trade after that. We could talk about the occupation of China after that. We could talk about the subjugation of Korea and China by Japan after that. We can talk about Manifest Destiny and the genocide of over 100 million Native Americans in North America. We can talk about that. We can talk about the brutal subjugation of the Kingdom of Hawaii. We 100% can talk about those things. But the cruelest evil, the most malevolent evil to date, were the Nazis. Spanning hundreds of years, thousands of years more than likely, of crimes against humanity before they were defined as such. The Nazis were the pinnacle of that malevolence. Even the Nazis didn't just target children with bombs and leaving them behind. They just killed them indiscriminately. It was hatred. It was violent. It was evil. But it was, for lack of a better word, equal across the board. Zionists are targeting children, using children as shields, using them as psychological warfare tools when they are harmed and becoming, not paraplegic, but amputees. A constant visual psychological reminder of the horrors that await any who oppose Zionist Israel. And Israel doesn't even have the courtesy to hide what they're doing. They are openly bragging about it. They are manipulating the entire Western world into defending their actions, protecting their actions, sanitizing their actions. Zionism Zionism is now the pinnacle definition of evil organization, of malevolent entity. Which is closely followed by the Nazis, who got their inspiration from the American slave trade. So it's coming full circle. So one of these videos actually seems mildly inspiring.
She's been picking on
Palestinians unite against settler attacks. Yeah, we are just now the states of America. Yeah, no, it makes me angry too.
olives for as long as she can remember. Fatima Sweti is 80 years old. For her, the annual harvest is about the olives as much as it is about connecting to the land. A chance to practice عونة, an Arabic word that translates as collective help. It's a cultural tradition that embodies unity and solidarity, particularly during the harvest season. Friends and neighbors volunteer to make a difficult process easier, quicker, and hopefully more enjoyable.
Orona was beautiful back then. Those were the good days, before the Israeli settlers started fighting us everywhere and every day. Now we barely have enough land left to harvest.
Today, Fatma is helping extended family members, making food, sorting the olives, and babysitting. She hopes there is safety in numbers. Here in the village of Beit Awa, settlers have been attacking Palestinian farmers, just as they do elsewhere in the occupied West Bank. So far this season, the UN says these attacks have damaged more than 3,000 fully grown trees and seedlings. Palestinians say the Israeli intention is clear: scare people off so they abandon their trees, so they desert their lands. As Israeli soldiers turn a blind eye, a defenseless population turns inwards for help. They resort to عونة.
Hey, this wasn't any better at all. This was not any more or less, shall I say, infuriating than IEDs targeting children. So we're gonna leave this. I want to talk about Palestine because it needs to be talked about, and if I don't talk about it, unless people talk about it, then it just gets buried, right? But I just don't understand how this isn't. I don't get it. It is just so overwhelming that this isn't what the world sees with regards to Israel literally terrorizing Palestinians day in and day out and using the military to back them up or turn a blind eye. The Palestinians have nowhere to turn to and no one to protect or defend them. Aside from the fact that they have the right to resist, and that's the whole point of Hamas, is to resist occupation under the Geneva Conventions, they are all being treated as criminals, as terrorists, by every single power that could do something about this. And the fact that it continues to not happen, that people continue to just turn a blind eye to this, it's devastating. It is devastating to watch week after week after week and see it happen more and more and worse and worse. So let's talk about something a little less distressing, like Russian nuclear missiles. Why the fuck not?
A Russian airstrike has killed at least 3 people in the Ukrainian capital. The attack hit 2 high-rise buildings in Kyiv in the early hours of Sunday. Kyiv has accused Moscow of trying to cause a humanitarian catastrophe as the cold weather sets in, but Russia says it's responding to Ukrainian drone attacks on its capital. Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin has visited a military outpost, saying Russia has successfully carried out a test of a nuclear-powered cruise missile. Putin was also given a detailed report by the army chief about the situation on the ground in Ukraine.
First of all, to minimise unnecessary human casualties, I'm asking to take all necessary measures to enable the surrender of Ukrainian troops, those who want to surrender. We have to treat prisoners of war in accordance with international law as well as Russian law. Russia's army has historically always been merciful towards a defeated enemy.
All right. Speaking of propaganda, I don't know that Russian military mercy history for surrendering enemies. Historical evidence shows a pattern of Russian military forces, particularly during the Soviet era, demonstrating a notable lack of mercy towards surrendering enemies. And that's the article that I guess we're watching the movie about right here, this one. The Germans who surrendered to Russia in World War II, 1 million of them died in captivity. And continuing on through to 1955. So that's not quite the case. That being said,
All right, let's go to Dmitry Medvedenko, who joins us live from Moscow. Dmitry, tell us more on what Putin has been saying exactly.
Well, Sarah, there are 2 main highlights. First of all, he was lauding the successes of the Russian army in Pokrovsk and in Kupiansk. He was saying, as you've heard just now, that basically there's a situation where Ukrainian troops are near surrender and Russia should enable that. So he's been saying that Russian forces have encircled those 2 cities. If you look at maps provided by the Institute for the Study of War, which is usually a reliable think tank to assess the situation on the front lines, you will see that both Pokrovsk and Kupiansk are around 50-60% controlled by Russian forces. But while Putin is presenting the situation as basically near victory, the Institute for the Study of War in its daily report today has said that indeed Russian forces are making advances in both directions, but Ukrainian forces are doing so as well, and there's no impending defeat of Ukrainian forces in Pokrovsk. So we have that, a disagreement of military analysts and the assessment of the Russian command. And then Putin also boasted the results of nuclear tests. Several days ago, we've seen him sit down and ordering the beginning of the test of nuclear readiness of Russian forces. And he has said that Russia has completed the test firing of a new generation of missiles called the Burevestnik, which is a winged, non-distance limited missile, which is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead and is using a nuclear-powered engine. And Valery Gerasimov, his chief of staff, said that during the test fire, this missile traveled 14,000 kilometers and spent 15 hours in the air. So there's also this kind of nuclear saber rattling.
Right.
Out fucking standing. The nuclear arms race has taken a new leap forward. 14. Okay. Circumference of Earth in Jesus kilometers. 40,000. Okay. So this nuclear-powered nuclear weapon can travel about a little over a third of the circumference of Earth in one go. Which pretty much, if we're looking at... oh, is this not interactive? Oh, it isn't. I thought it was interactive. My bad. So Russia is on the other side. And both of these maps show the same thing. Okay. So there's Russia. Well, Russia is actually like up here. That's China, India. Nope. Can't remember now. And I think this is Egypt. Anyway, Europe is right here. Russia is right here. 14,000 kilometers hits pretty much everything near Russia, right? And because, as Sarah Palin herself said, she can see Russia from her balcony, there is no place on Earth that cannot be hit by this missile. So, nuclear escalation has found, unironically, new heights. Outstanding.
And Dmitry, of course, this all comes while Russia's envoy Kirill Dmitriev is in the US. So what sort of message is that sending, do you think?
Well, it doesn't look like this can be considered a coincidence that while Kirill Dmitriev, who's the economic and investment envoy, is trying to, put his foot in the door and make sure that it's still open in diplomacy between Moscow and Washington, you have 2 out of 3 of Russia's top military commanders boasting territorial gains and at the same time talking about their new nuclear weapons. So it looks like the message from Moscow is that with Trump or without Trump's support on the diplomatic arena, Russia is still having the upper hand on the front lines. It's making slow but incremental gains in Ukraine. Also, it's quite important to remember that all of these cities take a very long time to change hands on control maps. Because, for example, the city of Chasiv Yar, Russia announced in early 2024 that it's taken control of it. That's a similar in size city to Kupiansk. And it fully took control of the city more than a year later.
All right, thank you very much for that update. From Moscow, Dmitry Medvedenko there.
Don't miss out. Get a full picture.
Thank you for the follow, Juriandel. Did we hit our follower goal? Hey! It's not showing up on the stream like my screen here, but it is apparently showing up. Should have shown up on chat. So thank you for that. How is it going, Durand from NL? I'm assuming is that Netherlands or is that just like your initials? Yeah, so Russia is patting itself on the back on the war front. Now, here's the thing that is, I think, a little bit lost on that. Why is this war in Ukraine taking so long if Russia's this big, scary menace? Well, because the destruction that Russia is causing against the Ukrainians isn't absolute devastation. They aren't trying to conquer Ukraine and then rebuild it as an occupied land or territory. Russia is trying to destroy Ukrainian infrastructure, military presence, and leadership in those cities and try and take them as intact as possible, which obviously requires a longer presence. If Russia wanted to conquer the Ukraine in a more direct method, there would be far more destruction in Ukraine. Period. Dot. End of story. The Russian military hasn't really been brought to bear. It just hasn't. Like, again, Russian military. I'm sure there's going to be a Wikipedia here. Are you... No. Russian military stats. Are you fucking kidding me? Russian armed forces. So, again, it might not tell us everything. But it looks like the military in Russia seems to be around 766,000 personnel, according to that. Which obviously I get in an active theater of war, they're going to be more hush-hush on their actual numbers and troop movements. Unlike America, who's like, I don't give a shit how many of our weapon systems you know about, right? But it does look like, oh shit, that there's supposedly 623,000 soldiers in Ukraine. Honestly, I would assume that that would be plenty to take over a country by force. But, again, how much damage and devastation would that do if they were just being given carte blanche? Because remember, at the height of the War on Terror, what was the most amount of U.S. military personnel in the Middle East during global war on terror? 200,000-ish, right? And there's triple the number in Ukraine. And Iraq and Afghanistan were fucked from that. Because we were unilaterally destroying infrastructure and going into villages and this, that, and the other, rooting out terrorists every single step of the way. So, I guess what I'm getting at here is what Russia is doing in the Ukraine is less of a conquest and more of a subjugation, right? Or colonization, if you will. You're not going to destroy the lands and the places that you are going to take over in the future, right? That's not why you're doing that. And it's just like wars in the past weren't scorched earth. It was expansion of territory. You're not going to slaughter all the men, women, and children in every single territory you take over because you're going to need men, women, and children to manage those territories, right? That is the same mindset that is being had here. So, anyway, sorry. Just look at the civilian toll compared to overall war death toll, and then Russia isn't depriving Ukrainian citizens of their food and aid, while Israel is actively withholding that all from Palestinians. No, exactly. And I think that's another thing that people get confused. They're seeing Israeli brutality against Palestinians and the absolute devastation of the Gaza Strip, and then they're comparing that to 5 years of Ukrainian and Russian aggression against one another. And they're like, well, that doesn't seem to be the same thing as that. Right, because that is genocide and that's war. War is still not pretty. There's still death and casualties and destruction, right? War is not pretty, but that's genocide. What Israel is doing to Palestine is genocide. Not even World War II got to that degree, because both of the Axis and Allies powers wanted to conquer the other, or the Allies wanted to subjugate the Germans, and Germany wanted to conquer everything on Earth, right? That's why they didn't just glass everything, because they needed to occupy the cities, house their soldiers, bring in supplies, and use it as forward operating bases. That's usually how war works. But Israel doesn't need that, because they're operating from their bases and they're close enough to be able to enter into Gaza within a reasonable amount of time for military activities. So again, what Israel is doing to Palestine isn't war, it's genocide. What Russia is doing to the Ukraine is war, not genocide. Russia allows journalists on their side of the front. Russia-Ukraine war, although terrible, is not a genocide. Gaza and Sudan absolutely are. Russia knows they need the people on their side. Exactly. That is exactly correct. That is 100% correct. So it seems like we're making a big splash in the Netherlands, because we have another one who watches us all the time from the Netherlands as well, although he's not here today. But apolitical. So yeah, I'm glad we're making it into the international arena. It's going to be really ironic if the majority of our viewership ends up being from Europe while we're trying to build a movement in the United States. That would be freaking hilarious. Let's see. Oh, right. And that's the other point, right? The Ukraine actually has a military and is backed by the US and NATO, whereas Palestine is literally by itself with maybe small arms in the form of not props, right? Palestinians are just getting butchered and are supposed to fight against tanks, rocket launchers, and an air force with a rifle. And that's not how that works. Russia is trying to convince its overtaken citizens that they're protectors, but Israel doesn't care about that because their end goal is to have no more Palestinians. No, you are 1,000% correct. That is 1,000% correct. I mean, that's all that needs to be said. So, 30 minutes left. Speaking of the Netherlands. Let's go. Well, apparently this says undecided.
Are you going to vote in the election?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes, every time.
I don't know for who.
Oh, yes, we will maybe.
I'm seriously doubting if I should vote.
So y'all have the same problem that we do in America. Apathy. France 24 vid. Anna, can you... Actually, you know what? That's fine. I can duplicate this. Stop!
Are you going to vote in the election?
Piece of shit. Is there not an actual result? Is there not a final outcome? Is there seriously not? Voting should have been over, right? Counting will go till the morning tomorrow. Okay, the polls are already closed. An exit poll came in. All right. Why is it giving us fucking Nigeria and Kenya? Bruh. Seriously? Dutch 2025 election results. What the fuck? There we go. I swear to God, YouTube and Google and all of these American-owned tech companies are seriously some of the most propagandized, deliberately information-denying propaganda algorithms on Earth. It's insane.
Our centrists appear to be on course to win most of the votes following legislative elections in the Netherlands, delivering a blow to the far right and opening a path for the energetic D66 leader Rob Jetten to become the country's youngest and first openly gay prime minister. Exit polls suggest his party is set to win 27 seats in parliament, coming in just ahead of the far right, whose leader Geert Wilders said a short time ago that he had hoped for a different outcome. Well, for the very latest, let's pause live now.
The Netherlands would have hoped for a different outcome. Of all the times apolitical isn't on this stream, we could be talking about this. But anyway, a centrist one. Now, I'm not going to bash the guy, and I'm not going to ask you who you voted for, but here's my take on centrism when fascism is on the ballot and leftism may or may not be as well. If centrism wins while fascism is being discussed, that is delaying the inevitable. If you don't have a clear rebuke of right-wing extremism through left-wing populism and you go for a centralist ideal, it is literally a stopgap from the fascism. Because America has had centrists since what? Reagan? Since before Reagan? And it's been a step towards fascism every single step of the way. Even when we got Obama, who was supposed to be the leftist hold on, what was the... Fuck. What did we call ourselves? progressive. Obama was the progressive candidate, and he was definitely right of center in everywhere that unfortunately made any sort of difference, right? In the policies he actually enacted, he was right of center. Or center right if you want to be gracious. And then we got Trump, and then we got Biden, and then we got Trump. From Reagan, we took the Overton window, right? I think, wasn't Carter right before Reagan? So we had Carter, which was center left. And then we had Reagan, who was right of center. I don't know how far right of center, but definitely right of center. And then we had Daddy Bush. And then we had Clinton. Although a Democrat, was still conservative because he was a Democrat from the fucking South and brought the strategy of being more conservative to gain more votes as the Democratic Party and becoming more corporatist. He's the reason why neoliberalism started to thrive in the Democratic Party. And then you had Bush Jr. And then you had Obama. And then you had Trump and Biden and Trump. So centrism is always a precursor to fascism, unless it is completely rebuked by populist ideology. As much as I dislike centrists, I guess it's better than fascists. I mean, I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that it is still distressing that it was only the centrists who won. That it was just centrists that became the top one. Leftists are the ones that needed a win, followed by centrists, and then maybe a trickling, right? But the slope needs to go this way. Certainly not that way. It just doesn't. Once the slope goes this way, it erodes until both of these become powerful and one comes out. And unfortunately, what we've been seeing is that the fascism ends up winning out because they have more resources. Center left, they're like the Democratic Party. D66 has led a heavy anti-far right campaign and never wants to get in coalition with the far right. Well, no, that's good. So they are center left of the actual Overton window. Then I applaud. Then I will give them their due diligence because I was thinking centrist like a Democrat, which is technically not center in the Overton window. Because I don't think the American politics has had a center politician since Jimmy Carter. And that is only based on the very little that I know about Carter's presidency, which is not a whole lot, unfortunately. So, that being said, well, let's hear more.
24's Fernand Van Tetz, who's with members of that centrist party. Fernand, good to have you with us. Firstly, tell us, what is the very latest? We're seeing exit polls suggesting a narrow victory for the centrists. When are we expecting the final results?
So the final results won't be known until tomorrow morning. The first votes are now being counted, and there is an error margin of 1 seat in these polls. However, the picture seems to be pretty clear that the centrists are, for now, looking to come out on top, with Geert Wilders narrowly behind, and then the Liberals of the VVD coming in at 23, and the Green Left Labour Party actually only winning 20 seats in the 150-seat parliament. And we actually just heard from leader Frans Timmermans that he will be resigning as party leader on the basis of this result.
Yeah.
And Wilders seems the clear winner the last time.
In one of the most dystopian timelines in America, not in America, sorry, the world isn't America. I apologize. That was a Freudian slip there. How can populism be losing and not gaining more steam as fascism is on the rise globally? Like, is that not a message that is just being shoved into everybody's face? That like, hey, fascism is happening everywhere, and populism is the solution to fascism, and yet it just cannot seem to gain any traction. I don't get that. That is deeply concerning, especially when the Dutch, the Netherlands, are an extremely forward-thinking country. We've celebrated a lot of their accomplishments in agriculture and trade on this very channel. As of several months ago, I think was their agricultural thing. But it's very concerning. Yeah, that's ridiculous that the Green Left shrunk. And, you know, it goes to the fickle nature of people in times of peace and plenty. Once people get complacent, once people become comfortable, they expect that comfort to continue, and they will lash out at the previous entity that provided that comfort if it even slowly or marginally gets messed with, which is called biting the hand that feeds you, which is one of the reasons why, as a congressional candidate and as a future presidential candidate and elected official, is when I enter into those positions, my mantra will be to never stop fighting and to encourage nobody else to ever stop fighting. If we aren't actively at the front lines every single moment of every single day, our stuff, our freedoms, our rights will get taken from us. And we thought rights were inalienable. Except, you know, if 3 branches of government collude to take them away from you. Hola, Third Way. Welcome to the stream, even though it's towards the end, but please join us for the last 30 minutes of it. You voted for the Socialist Party. Awesome. I wish we had a Socialist Party that was worth a damn, and a socialist organization that was actually funded enough to accomplish anything, because we are nowhere close to that in the United States of America, as you can imagine. So,
Dutch voters went to the polls. Does this come as a shock for him? What has actually gone wrong with his campaign? Or is this due, if the final result is as we're seeing in these exit polls, is that simply due to the success and the campaign, the positive campaign that was run by this centrist party?
So I think there's a number of things at play. First of all, of course, this was really his election to lose, right? He had such a huge majority last time round. And there's a saying in Dutch politics that who breaks pays. So if you make the government fall, as he did, that there usually is a political price to pay. Now, it long looked like that wasn't the case for him, but also his campaign has been kind of lackluster. He's cancelled a number of debates and interviews, initially citing a security threat, which also hit the Prime Minister of Belgium. But later, when the security service says actually he would be free to campaign, he still chose not to appear on many platforms. And when he did show up on the debate stage, he just felt really uncomfortable in this new role of having to defend his policies, because the way he became a big force in Dutch politics is by attacking those in power. But now he had the largest amounts of seats, yet failed to have his platform materialize. And parties really went for him on that front. And the second thing is that last time round, the door to power was open to him, with the Liberals saying that they would be willing to form a coalition. This time round, all parties, the next 4 biggest parties, have categorically shut out the possibility of forming any coalition with him. So that also hit him, because basically if you would vote for him, it would be a vote for nothing, because you knew that he wouldn't be able to form a government. And also the other party leaders were really hammering him on that fact, especially last night.
That is literally the most genius thing that they could have possibly fucking done. Crazy thought. A coalition against the right-wing candidate, guaranteeing that if that candidate won, nobody would work with the administration. There's a thought. Maybe if the Democrats refused to lick the boot of Trump and ICE and the military for 5 fucking seconds, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess. Ridiculous notion, I know. Wow. Wilder is actually not fully white. His grandmother was indigenous in Indonesia, and Indonesia is considered a Western country according to the Dutch government. That's interesting. Our far-right party is weirdly social conservative, but so heavy on that conservatism that they're far-right. Yeah, but that's the thing. That's how they bait and switch you. Neo-Nazi groups don't just form by spouting hate and violence. They show up by being pleasant and kind and friendly, and then once they're already infested in your area, then they take off their mask, and then it's too fucking late. So I think it's just the bait and switch on that point. Or I guess a failure of hiding the bait and switch. Still, though, crazy idea to publicly denounce the opposition party, which can then shift public opinion to not voting for, or I'm sorry, they're not opposition, voting for the alt-right party, which will then shift public opinion away from the alt-right party because they still want a functional government. Pretty crazy how that shit works. Yeah, once you see your friendly neighborhoods see Kyle, you think it might not be that bad. No, you're 100% correct about that. All right. So that's the Netherlands. Oh, there's been a couple. That's great. Tanzania. Let's go.
President Samia Suluhu Hassan's main rivals have been barred from running in Wednesday's general elections in Tanzania. Tundu Lissu leads the largest opposition party, called Chadema. He's been in jail since April on trial for treason. His supporters have not been welcome at court hearings. The party's deputy chairman, John Heche, was bundled into a police pickup when he tried to attend last week. He hasn't been seen since. Much of the press has been barred.
So, remember how I said that we are dangerously close to dealing with a full, total control of authoritarianism in America? And that our elections are going to be interfered with by the police, i.e. the secret police, ICE, and the military? That is a preview of what that might very well look like.
From covering the polls, and most Chadema party officials are in hiding. We were able to speak to one who's in a secret location.
Since the first...
I'm also in a secret location right now. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House. So, if the FBI, the CIA, or Secret Service is looking for me, I am in the White House. You should absolutely kick in the windows behind me and cause a big kerfluffle.
Of October this year, there have been over 60 abductions and enforced disappearances across the country, and the number is growing. It's completely a sham. There's no election at all.
President Samia's CCM party has ruled Tanzania for nearly half a century. She took office after
Wow. 50 years of control and power? Wow. No wonder everybody's fed up with it and why there are secret police abducting opposition party members.
President John Magufuli died 4 years ago. She's promising major infrastructure projects and universal health insurance, and she doesn't want planned election day protests to get in the way.
I want to assure the youth of Tanzania, do not be deceived into destroying your country's peace. Follow the government and the law, and you will live in safety and peace, and no one will disturb you.
Wasn't it? That is the most threatening thing I have ever heard. Follow the law, follow the government, trust in Big Brother, and you will live in peace and safety. Also, we'll give you, I'm also campaigning on universal health care, something I could have done already as the sitting president. That takes some gumption. Explain to me about the public grocery store owned by the military. Is it nonprofit? If you're talking about AFIs, in the U.S. military, like the grocery store that's on every single military installation, those are not public. They are not open to the public. I believe they are a private company that is solely contracted by the military to fund or to provide groceries at not significantly, but oftentimes lower prices than what you could get at other places. 340 million people in the U.S. It only takes 1 million well-coordinated people to topple a government. Probably even way less than 1 million. No. Well, okay. Let me rephrase. Clearly, the answer is yes. Because it only took 51 senators and 200 some odd Congress people and 4 Supreme Court justices a president and their administration to actually topple the government. And then it took a bunch of complicit ICE agents, generals, military personnel, and governors and state legislators as well to facilitate it. So you're technically not wrong. It would take around 1 million. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, there's 1 million actors at play that are colluding with the Trump administration to bring about fascism in America. I'm not going to argue that particular fact. However, in order to combat fascism, once it's already established, through those same machinations, you're definitely going to need that 11.5 million, 3% of the population, sustaining its efforts over the course of 90 days. So, if the party fragments before that final, collusion has been achieved, if that final consolidation of power doesn't come to fruition because of the fragmentation, maybe we can get away with a lesser amount of people resisting this administration. Otherwise, it's going to take 3% or more of the population. Oh, you're talking about that. That's what you're talking about. Okay. Well, hold on. I think we got enough time. Let's cover Madagascar and Bangladesh, and then we'll do the...
Tievna Andrea Merinda was among the thousands of young people who joined protests in Madagascar complaining about a lack of services from the government. The demonstrations forced President André Joël from power.
Instead of spending money on the needs of the population, he spent money on stadiums and cable car, which are things that we don't even need in our daily lives. What we need is electricity, water, basic commodities.
At the heart of public
food, shelter, wages, healthcare. That is a universal rallying cry. That is literally a universal rallying
anger
cry.
is a $170 million cable car completed earlier this year. Critics say the project, constructed with French loans, is evidence of misplaced priorities and corruption.
The cable car was meant to ease traffic in Antananarivo, but the cost of a ticket was 6 times more than a bus ride, putting it out of reach for most people here. Critics say not only was it expensive, it also increased Madagascar's debt. The cable car operated for just a few weeks before it was damaged during the protests.
3/4 of people.
Jesus fucking Christ. Is it the IMF? Is that the bank? The International Monetary Fund? Like, if we want to talk about colonization in modern times, the IMF is as bad or worse than Israel. Because, again, Israel is using violence for colonization purposes, and the IMF is using financial ruin for colonization purposes. And these leaders in these countries that still work with the IMF are constantly still doing it because they're getting paid while the people suffer. And again, what do the people want? Food, shelter, wages, and healthcare. The necessities. Fascism only works in obedience, and they scare you into that. They try to make you feel weak, but proud, insecure, yet enraged. Do not obey, and they shall crumble. 100% agree. Hence why our rallying cry. I know Steve probably stepped away from the stream for a minute, but I really want to see if we can't promote that phrase. Food, shelter, wages, healthcare. Just make that a rallying cry on social media and anything else that you can. So that's that. Bangladesh.
Bangladesh's interim government has published the July Charter named for the month last year, in which a student-led uprising ousted the Prime Minister. But critics say the charter doesn't outline clear actions, and members of the student-led National Citizen Party have refused to sign it, protesting.
So the powers that be, and I just pressed a button, the powers that be are like, hey, we want to stop the riots and keep our heads on our shoulders, So here's a charter that we think you might listen to. And the students are like, because they weren't involved in the charter. Imagine that. Like, the audacity of crumbling administrations and governments to just hold on to power with their bleeding fingernails falling off of their fingers. Power is the only thing that drives these people, and it is exactly why they are being protested against as hard as they are. I can only pray and hope that America starts building up on that soon, but again, food, shelter, wages, healthcare. Maybe that's how we get America to start standing up.
And confronting police during the ceremony.
We asked them to discuss the matter urgently, but they haven't responded. The July Charter was written with the blood of those who gave their lives.
It promises term limits for prime ministers, strong checks on power, and justice for victims of past political violence. Critics say the July Charter signed by Bangladesh's interim government in October is not legally binding, meaning its reform can't be enforced until a new parliament is elected.
Of course.
The student-led National Citizens Party and others see this as a major flaw. Student leaders say
it's like the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. If those were ratified before the war with England was over, and the colonists even before they signed it. So before the Declaration was signed, they're going to go to war. Like, that's what they're trying to do here. It's like, hey, we have the charter, stop rioting. And it's like, it's a powerless piece of paper. I mean, you may as well invoke this for all the good it's going to do. You may as well make this the law for all the good it's going to do if it's not officially voted on or supported. Ridiculous.
Demonstration will continue.
The National Citizen Party hasn't signed the July Charter because its legal framework and key details are unclear. Dr. Muhammad Yunus must clarify the draft before we can endorse it.
Wow. The tension highlights the frustration.
This is basically trying to codify Project 2025 into law. Because some of what's in Project 2025 is very clear-cut, but a lot of it isn't as well. And then, of course, many of the things in Project 2025, which is what's happening in real time, are undermining the Constitution. So, needless to say, yeah, that the response that these kids are giving to their government is absolutely correct. And, of course, the police continue to do what the police always do in a regime. They protect the crumbling empire and violently try and silence opposition and dissent. The police should be working with citizens at this point, because guess what? The police are still citizens at the end of the day. And their government, the same government that is paying them to harm citizens, is still harming them. Like, I don't understand the logic. It is illogical. Does not compute. Republicans and conservatives vote for their own self-interest, not for all the others we live together with in our society. That's why there are almost always such horrible people, because they don't care about anything but themselves. They're the egotistical twats that think they're the only worthy soul. No, I won't argue with that. And it's also why they also happen to be, oftentimes, religious. Because religion is about individual salvation while worshiping a god and focusing on this thing. I wish people who use this book actually followed this book. I really, truly do. Because there's some good stuff in this book, right? The Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, specifically. Taking care of one another. I wish people that call themselves Christians would actually take Jesus' teachings. But instead, they point to all the things that are discriminatory and binding or othering in the Bible and use that as the weapon and the selling point. It's disgraceful. So, there's a couple of good videos left on here. I don't know that we'll necessarily get to all of them. But, this one should be pretty promising. A 92-year-old
downtown
won their
Douala, a
8th
city
term.
holding its breath after a night of protest, waiting to learn the fate of Cameroon's 92-year-old president, Paul Biya. On national television, the Constitutional Council declares Biya the winner, handing him an 8th term in office. Crowds surge onto the streets, not just in Douala, but in Garoua, Yaoundé, and Bamenda. They chant the name of opposition candidate Issa Chiroma Bakari. Young women, middle-aged men, for 2 generations, they've known no other leader. And they say Paul Biya is not the president they want.
The Cameroonian people, the youth of Cameroon, are demanding their victory by majority vote. We all know that Cameroon, the people, voted overwhelmingly for Issa Chiroma.
I don't understand why someone would take power and treat it as if it belonged to their family. Cameroon is not a kingdom, it is a country, a blessed, beautiful country.
You know what? For once, the translators are having a little bit of energy in their translations. Good job on the translator. But secondly, that's exactly what's going to happen in America if Trump goes for a 3rd presidency. And if people aren't rioting against him trying to become president a 3rd time, then he's going to get it. And that's the thing. If people aren't going to riot against abuses of power, then you don't have rights. You don't have a democracy. If you're being, brutally cracked down, then you really don't have a democracy, because otherwise that wouldn't be happening. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this story as it unfolds, the Cameroonian people, and see if they overthrow this president and make sure that there's the person that they wanted, which I missed.
Cameroon, the people, voted overwhelmingly for Issa Chiroma.
Issa Chiroma. We'll see if Issa Chiroma ends up in the position of power, the position of authority that the people of Cameroon elected them for. Let's see. With that, I think we've got time for one more video. Or maybe I can do it quickly and do Greenland as well.
There is the President of the United States and the President of South Korea. We know President Trump certainly loves gold, and that is quite a gift that he is being gifted right now by the people of South Korea at this big summit. Quite an interesting moment. We are going to continue
awarding you with this medal with their deep appreciation.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor, and we're going to keep it very good for Korea. It's very...
So, I thought this crown thing was supposed to be presented as an insult and a joke. But this seems to be very formal and very serious, so... yeah, that is really fucking weird. And that is a very ostentatious crown on top of that. Okay. Because this looks like the actual ceremony and not discussion about it.
Seoul, good to see you again, Will. So tell us more about the crown.
Yeah,
and the
what's
medal
up with this?
presented to the US president coming after the recent No Kings protests in the United States, and what came out of his meeting with South Korea's new leader?
Yes, President Trump has now been bestowed with the Grand Order of Mugunghwa, which is the highest honor that can be awarded here in South Korea. And then, of course, how can you miss that enormous gold-plated crown worn by the Shilla kings of Korea in the 5th and 6th centuries, adorned with things like trees and deer and birds, all symbols of sacred authority and divine rule. And now President Trump has it. And this is a picture that's worth 1,000 words, and how countries in this region, and really many around the world, are learning how to deal with the U.S. president, who loves to be flattered, loves to be praised, loves gold. You got all of that here in South Korea today. And then they sat down and talked about the business at hand.
Sorry. I did not read up on chat. Sorry. Funny how Bible Belt people are so self-centered while Jesus was all about caring and giving. Yep, nope. That's one of the reasons why I brought that up. They are the most unchristlike people, and they love Trump, who is pretty much the Antichrist. And the Bible literally teaches that one with much unspread wealth is unholy and overtaken with greed. Again, 100% correct. I thought you'll be the second president who will not be sworn in on the Bible. No, oh, I wouldn't be the first? Oh, that's right, because I think George Washington didn't, right? But yeah, no, you're right. You know what I should do is swear in on one of these books. Whoops. The Book of the Fallen? Or the Goetia? Like the Satanic Bible. Or Jewish, or I think that's Kabbalism. So Jewish mysticism. It is fucking weird. Also, that crown having that much significance in South Korean history, why the fuck would you give it to that piece of shit of all people? Like, that is literally a national treasure of South Korea, and you're gonna give it to the biggest piece of garbage to ever come into a power in America? I don't get that. The world needs to stop sucking his cock and spit on it. They know how bribable he is. And and again, why would you bribe him with something that's a national treasure? Like, what? I don't understand that. And CNN isn't going to say that it was like an underhanded, backhanded compliment either. So I'm not understanding what's fucking going on here. So, that does bring us to 10 o'clock, though. So, we did really well today. I think we covered a majority of the list for once. So, with that being said, thank you all for coming to the stream. Thank you for joining us here. I appreciate you guys from all over the world coming and watching the stream, participating, and spreading the good word. Food, shelter, wages, and healthcare. I guess we did talk about this good word, but neither here nor there, the joke notwithstanding. We will be coming back again tomorrow for Recap Thursdays. What Recap Thursdays are is anything we may have missed on Tuesday or Wednesday from our actual playlists, or breaking news that we obviously couldn't have covered because it was breaking news. We'll be back again. Actually, normally we would be back again 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, but tomorrow my moderator, Anna, has to, and I'm saying it in a negative light, she's taking her lovely daughter out trick-or-treating. So we're going to be a little late tomorrow. We're going to be going 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. So if you're used to coming in at 7, we're going to instead move it to 8. So we're only going to be doing a 2-hour stream tomorrow. So with that being said, have a great night. And I, your president, Samuel Ronan, will see you tomorrow.